So I'd like to do another test vote tonight just to make sure our technology is sound. We didn't touch anything since last night, so it all should work. So if you could take out your clickers and vote on tonight's poll, we will make sure that everyone's technology is in good working order. Okay, thank you. Mr. Malik, could you display the results so people can check their vote? Retest? Okay. All right, folks, apparently if people missed the first test, we're going to, you get a do-over. We'll take the poll again and do a test so everybody gets a chance. A number of people I don't think voted first time because we do have quorum checked in tonight. So we'll open the poll again, Rob and Matt. All right, please vote. Evening, Dr. Burroughs. Ladies and gentlemen, while we take care of those two technology items, I think I'll call our meeting back in order. Thank you for joining us again tonight. As you might suspect, we're back at Article 6. Thank you for your diligence these past two nights. We do have a green sheet on Article 6. I will read, can we display the green sheet, please? I'm skipping 5 since that was completed in the consent agenda. Article 6 recommended that $1,020,000 be appropriated under this article and that $1,020,000 be raised from the tax levy. With this, I'd first like to recognize Mr. Humphreys, the chair of the Warrant Committee. Mr. Humphreys, you're recognized to explain our new motion.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Dave Humphreys, Chairman of the Warrant Committee. With regards to this green sheet, you'll see that there is a change with regards to the money that will be raised from the tax levy. Yep, sorry. There's going to be a change on this, and the reason for this was, and we're going to ask Mr. Milano to give a more detailed explanation of how this happened, was that there were some monies that were made available to the town following the budget process and following the presentations to the Warrant Committee's recommendations, and the warrant being presented to the town for your consideration. So based upon those monies being made available to the town, this proposal was presented to the Warrant Committee by Nick Milano and with the recommendation, I believe, of the Select Board. And it would be our recommendation to you that you vote yes on this article. Mr. Milano, would you help us out?
By the way, Chair Wells is absent tonight, so Vice Chair Musto will be standing and representing the Select Board tonight. Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Nicholas Milano, Town Administrator. Article 6 is the funds set aside for collective bargaining agreements. At the time that the warrant went to print, we were still awaiting an award for the Milton Firefighters Union through the Joint Labor Management Committee binding arbitration process. That award came down at the end of April, or excuse me, mid-April, April 16th. After reviewing the award, we needed to increase the amount of money in the fiscal 25 budget in order to fully fund the award for that contract. That contract is for fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. We had money set aside in the amount of $895,000, which would fund collective bargaining agreements for the Milton Firefighters Union as well as the Milton Professional Management Association. But after the award came down, it was not sufficient to fully fund the contract. As a result, we met with the Warrant Committee to discuss a revised recommendation to increase this appropriation by $125,000 to $1,020,000, as you see before you. Happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this article? Submitted by the Select Board, then we'll proceed to a vote as a majority vote. If we could open up the poll, please. All in favor, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion carries 200 to 0 with 2 abstentions. With that, we'll turn to Article 7, which is on page 18 of your warrant. We also have a green sheet for that, so Madam Warrant Committee Clerk, could you put up Article 7? With this, I'll turn again to Chair Humphreys of the Warrant Committee. Mr. Humphreys, you're recognized.
Thank you. I will be brief. We're going to again ask for the assistance of Mr. Milano with a more detailed explanation of Article 7. Our recommendation is that the town would approve by way of a yes vote the recommendation with regards to Article 7. It's important with regards to Article 7, and I discussed this in my opening remarks, and it's in my report, that given the budget situation that we were looking at this year, where we did not pursue an override, there were some mechanisms by which we were able to find the funds available to be able to maintain level spending year over year. One of the things that happened, which was important, and though I guess we're not supposed to mention people by name, I won't mention Member Jay Fundling, because I guess that would violate some, anyway, I won't mention him. A lot of work and detailed analysis was done in many of the articles with regards to the town finances, and the employee benefits Article 7 was one of them, is that there's a couple important things that are happening here. Number one is that we are now fully funding the retirement, we're fully funding the town retirement system, which is what's going to happen there is we're going to be able to start carrying forward approximately $1.5 million a year that we had previously been having to budget to that line item. So that helped us out in this budget. Another situation that's going to happen here is that because our employee benefits are funded at such a level, it is possible for us in the next fiscal year, 25, to have a one-payment health insurance holiday. And the fact that we're not going to be making that payment is another reason why we were able to zero out this budget for level funding. You know, the reason I'm bringing all that up is when we talk about how we're cutting to the bone and how the departments are doing things on a shoestring, it's mechanisms like this that are the shoestring that are tying the budget together, okay? So know that. And so I'm going to ask for Mr. Milano for a more detailed explanation, and he'll be able to answer better than I can specific detailed questions on the ins and outs of this. Thank you.
Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nicholas Milano, Town Administrator. So Article 26 for the school department budget has a green sheet as well that contemplates an increase of $245,000 to the school budget. As a result, school staffing would increase. The reason for the increase to this article is to fund potential benefits associated with those three positions. Both this, the prior article, as well as Article 26, the additional funding came as a result of an increase to the town's state aid in the House of Representatives budget that was released and approved in April. So when the warrant went to print, we were relying on older estimates for state aid. As we approached town meeting, we were notified of additional revenues, and that is the purpose for some of these appropriations, to put those new revenues back into the budget. And in this case, the $71,000 increase approximately would fund potential benefits for additional staff in the school department. And I'll just echo what Mr. Humphrey said. The town's retirement system will reach full funding at the close of fiscal 24. We had expected this to happen 2 years from now. Thanks to the astute observations of a warrant committee member, he came to us last fall and said, hey, I think we're going to reach full funding 2 years ahead of schedule, just so you folks know. Thanks to his heads up, we were able to adapt and plan around that. So we have set aside money for future liabilities, hence additional money going into the retirement system this year, and as well as the $1.5 million going into the OPEB trust to start paying down our future OPEB liability that was approved as part of the consent agenda. So that's the background on this article. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you'd like to wallow in that presentation, it is posted up in the town meeting page under Article 7. With that, I see Mr. Fahey, you're recognized for a question, sir, or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a comment, not a question. I'm glad both our town administrator and Mr. Humphreys spoke about this. If you haven't given attention to page 13, which is the warrant comments that Chair Humphreys just spoke about, I would encourage you to make sure that you read them. It's not complicated, but it's very simple, and it reflects a concern that I personally have, and the concern that I personally have is for the financial health and the financial future of our town. The last comment, you can read most of this on your own, but the last comment on that page reads, "The financial situation the town faced a year ago has not changed, and the list of unfunded requirements is growing across the board. If the town does not find an override politically palatable, it will soon test its appetite for cuts." We are dependent upon excellent decisions every single time we have to make a financial decision from here on forward. We all know that we've talked about building a new school. We've talked about recently funding the third fire station. Chair Walsh explained that to us. And in my opinion, the actions we took to balance the budget aren't necessarily what I would consider financially responsible. We kicked the can down the road. In my day job, I'm responsible for a P&L statement. My company is a large company. I don't consider use of free cash, use of the remaining American Rescue Plan Ag funds, which is all over now. This is the last year. Yes, we got a holiday on a health insurance premium. And to the best of my knowledge, this is one of the rare times that we did zero funding of the stabilization fund. That's not a good practice. So the financial challenges are ahead of us. It's our boards in this body that is going to set the path for the future of the town. This past year, our select board passed on $2.5 million, a generous donation towards the construction of the animal shelter. $2.5 million. We passed on that. When we're asking our residents to consider an override, and they recognize we make decisions like that, how do they feel as taxpayers? This is my chance to talk. I'm calling attention. Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Fahey?
Mr. Zoll's interrupting me.
If you could just wrap up your comments.
I will.
Briefly, thank you.
I would like for all of us and the residents that might be watching to recognize that our path forward is going to be difficult. We have a heck of a challenge ahead of us. And hopefully we all will not only have an awareness, but give attention and express your point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Good evening, Jill Clark, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4. Mr. Moderator, I have another question for Mr. Milano. He mentioned increased state aid in the House budget that's resulting in this green sheet and the green sheet on Article 26. I'm wondering what the outcome of state aid was for the Senate budget on Tuesday.
So the question is, what was the outcome, the amount the state aid was? Is that your question? Yes. Mr. Milano, do you have that number?
I don't really need the amount, but just how it compared to the House.
Pardon me?
Sure. So the Chapter 70 education aid was the same as in the House budget. However, the Senate did increase the appropriation to the unrestricted general government aid account. So for Milton, that means there's $76,000 additional in the state aid budget for Milton. However, we don't as of yet, have the cherry sheets that explain all the receipts and the assessments. All I can say at this point is that there's additional aid flowing to the town based on the first draft of the Senate budget that was released yesterday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, you're recognized.
Leroy Walker, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 10. I wasn't expecting to talk this early, and frankly, I was going to try to be quiet all night. But this is a body that is one where decorum matters. And as you might recall, we had some decorum issues a couple of meetings ago. So I would implore all of you, but particularly the chief executive officers of our town, the select board, to abide by those rules of decorum. It should never be the case that a town meeting member is making their comments and a member of our select board interrupts them in the middle of their comments. That's unacceptable.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Zoll.
Ben Zoll, Select Board Member and Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5. I apologize to Mr. Fahey. Obviously, he and I say things very differently about the certain things. We definitely agree on the financial state of this town and the over-reliance on residential taxes that create this long-term gap that we have. I'm very proud of the work that we did on the Finance Committee. I'm very proud of the work that Mr. Fundling, whose name we're not supposed to say, really helped contribute to raise our awareness of this issue. But I think I take the point. I will continue to remain quiet over here, and I hope we can get through the rest of this quickly and peacefully, and then get to the business of the town. Thank you.
Boy, the skies have opened up, haven't they? I see no other speakers here, so we'll go to a vote. This requires a majority vote. If we could open up the poll. All those in favor of the motion before the body, please signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion carries with a vote of 207 yes, 3 no, and 0 abstains. Thank you very much. 8, 9, 10 were all passed by consent, so we'll flip to page 11. We also have a green sheet because of some work done by one of our former town officers. I'd like to start this one by recognizing, excuse me just a second. We'll recognize, I think briefly, Chair Humphreys on the article.
Thank you. Dave Humphreys, Chair of the Warrant Committee. With regards to Article 11, there was an amendment that was proposed to Article 11, which was, do we have that, Karen? Thank you. And it's going to be a recommended change from what was presented to us in the warrant. And this was proposed as an amendment, and we will hear from her by former chair of the Select Board, Katie Conlon, to make an adjustment from the Select Board general expense line. And that's going to also track in Article 33 is what the proposal would be is to take $15,000 out of the select board budget and to put it in Article 33 into the reserve fund. The reason for that being is that there had been $15,000 that had been allocated for the select board budget for purposes of the Affordable Housing Trust. Katie Conlon will do a better job of explaining precisely the mechanism here, but that is going to be accounted from another budget, and that we would therefore transfer this money at this point to the reserve fund. So our recommendation with regards to Article 11 would be to a yes as amended, and then on Article 33, it will be yes as amended as well. Thank you.
I can point out to the audience where these changes would be affected. If you go to your warrant, page 27, and look at item 6, Select Board, the last detail item says general expenses. That's $75,380. That's where the $15,000 is reduced. And then the subtotal line, total select board, just below that, 806, that's where the $15,000 is reduced from the subtotal. And then the effect of that is on page 28. The entire total for the general government, that $5,000,003 is also reduced by the $15,000. So that's the impact of this change recommended by Ms. Conlon, who I'll recognize to speak to explain it to the body. Ms. Conlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Katie Conlon, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I'm also a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, but I'm speaking tonight just as a Town Meeting member. The reason for the $15,000 reduction, and I thank the Warrant Committee for, sounds like I don't need to make the amendment because the Warrant Committee is making this now on its own.
That's
But
right.
I did meet with the Warrant Committee the other night and have talked with the Town Administrator, the former Chair of the Select Board, and the new Chair of the Select Board over the last few weeks. Just to suggest this reduction and moving the funds into the reserve fund. As we've just heard, there's been a lot of budget challenges. This is a tight budget year. We've had a lot of those over the years, and often the way budgets get closed as we get in the run-up to town meeting is by revisiting line items, revisiting revenue projections, looking to see where money can be moved from one line to another. There was a significant increase in state aid that addressed the school issues, so I think the appropriate place for this, and the Warrant Committee was in agreement, was probably to put it into the reserve fund. The $15,000 was a line item that the town administrator had explained at a Warrant Committee meeting that I happened to be watching on television. It was for a shared housing services office, and that's a third-party company that provides services, administration, monitoring services for affordable housing units, not only in Milton, but in several other towns. The lead town is Hopkinton, and there are several towns, Sharon, Medfield, Randolph, that are also parties to this agreement. So the agreement is in place. We're not talking about whether we should sign an agreement or anything like that. This is simply a question of the funding. Last week, the Affordable Housing Trustees agreed to fund this out of the Affordable Housing Trust's own funds, not the general fund or the tax levy. So by the Affordable Housing Trust offering to pick up this cost, it frees up some money in the operating budget. A small amount, to be sure, but often small amounts cobbled together are what helps us close a budget gap. So that was the purpose for this. The Affordable Housing Trust has a trust account that's separate from the general fund, so for new town meeting members, that's under the control of the Affordable Housing Trustees. And obviously, we want to use those funds primarily for new affordable housing units in town and promoting affordable housing. But we also have existing affordable housing, and there are some services that need to be performed. The town planner, Tim Zerwinski, had brought this idea initially 2 years ago to the Affordable Housing Trust, and we were able to vote in favor of using the funds, $15,000 of the fund for this purpose. So that's the reason for it, and I thank the Warrant Committee and the Select Board. Thank you, Mr.
ma'am.
Moderator.
Yes. Ms. Agostino, you're recognized.
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Town Meeting Member of Precinct 9 and Chair of the Commission on Disability. The moderator and I have gone back and forth, and I do have a document to submit, especially with the green sheet that wasn't available last night, or at least when I picked up green sheets, I did not receive it on this article. So I have 2 amendments to provide you in writing for you to review to assist me in making a decision between the 2 options because of the urgent need.
Okay.
Has the stuff.
Ms. Agostino, would you please read the exact language you are proposing?
So the proposal is that under Select Board, Section 6, page 27, under salary dash other, $10,000 be added to that line item for a total of $536,937. And that general expenses be reduced by that $10,000, so that would be $65,380. Since I didn't have the green sheet, the numbers that you asked for are now firm, and the reserve fund would be a separate item later.
All right. Madam Warrant Committee Clerk, were those numbers clear? Okay. I will ask you, I'll just explain what Ms. Agostino was proposing. If you look at page 27 of your warrant, back to that same section 6, currently general expenses reads, according to our green sheet, let me get the right number. It will read $60,380. So she wants to reduce that to $50,380 and then increase salary other to $536,936. That's just above that. Let me go make sure we get this correct. Just a moment.
To let 5,000 go to the reserve.
15,000 would still go over, so she's moving within. You're staying within the budget. You're not touching the reserve fund.
Right.
Ms. Agostino, would you explain your, Ms. Agostino, would you explain for the audience the reason for your motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for allowing this motion due to the very important matter at hand, and many matters at hand. And it's up on the screen, that we would reduce has the green sheet, had noted they had 15,000, they were going to make a reduction. So we're to reduce the Select Board's general expense line from 75,380 to 50,380, and to reduce the Select Board's budget from 806,666 to 79,1666, and to change I think that's part of the other.
It is. You want to move $10,000 from general expenses to salary other.
Correct.
Can you explain just briefly why you want to do that?
It is, and it was just yesterday that I did speak to the U.S. Justice Department due to the concerns, so many different topics, that we have a qualified ADA coordinator. And since the moderator and I have gone back and forth, I've gone back and forth with other town officials to try to figure out how we're going to have a qualified ADA. The commission over the years, over the last 5 years, have discussed adding a line item budget, and 10,000 would be a start, so that when anything is proposed in this town, it would be ADA, it would be ADA compliant, which protects the town. There's a whole list of violations and fines from many municipalities that I follow, and the other members of the commission read and follow. So that $15,000 savings, just taking 10,000, you don't have to list it's an ADA coordinator, you just have to say salary other to get a qualified person. So I thank the moderator, and I thank the Warrant Committee for the consideration, and I thank the Select Board, and I thank the participants here, because it's often not individuals who go about their daily routine that are fully aware of the issues that face the disabled. And I greatly appreciate a second to this motion.
There's a second. Does everyone now understand the motion before the body, or I can summarize it quickly if you don't? Yes. Ignore the $15,000. Just put it out of your head. She just wants to move $10,000 from general expenses to $10,000 out of that, and increase salary other by $10,000 in order to fund an ADA coordinator. I think we learned the other night that currently the ADA coordinator position is filled by Mr. Milano, our town administrator. That's what's up tonight. I think then Mr. Cuccelli, you're first, and then, ma'am, you're next.
Anthony Cicchello, Precinct 4, Town Meeting Member. I have two questions. The first would be, what would be the impact to the Select Board if $10,000 was removed from their general expense budget? Presumably it's a substantial percentage of the budget. I just want to know if there would be an impact that would be from that. My second question is, it appears that the role of the ADA coordinator could be assigned to any one of a number of employees. It currently is assigned to Mr. Milano, who does that, as I understand, as part of his job function. It's not clear to me if the goal of this is to create a new position, and if it was, is that position required to be in our personnel bylaw listed as a separate position, or would this just be expected to be additional salary that would be paid to someone because these duties were provided to them? I mean, it sounds like we have somebody that's in this role right now. Among Ms. Agostino's concerns seem to be, is the person sufficiently trained or qualified? If we put money in the salary budget, that doesn't allow for necessarily training the person. It allows for additional salary, but not the expense of sending them to a course. So if anybody could shed some light on that, that'd be helpful.
Let me see if I captured it. One, what's the impact, what's the Select Board's opinions of the impact of reducing general expenses by $10,000? That was one, right? The second was, is the ADA coordinator already an existing position authorized by the Personnel Board? That was the second, I think, right?
Yes, or is the goal of this to assign the responsibilities to somebody else that would be paid additional funds. I'm
Or
not
that.
sure what Ms. Agostino's goal is for that. Thank
Well, let's start with the select board on the first one. Vice Chair Musto, can you answer the general expenses question?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Roxanne Musto, Vice Chair of the Select Board. I'd like to recognize Mr. Milano to answer the questions regarding the ADA coordinator position and what $10,000 cut, a $10,000 cut would mean to our budget. Thank you.
Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nicholas Milano, Town Administrator. So this is about a 20% reduction to the Select Board General Expense Budget, which is, office supplies, professional development, just everyday expenses that we use. So it would be a significant impact to our expense budget. The position, as indicated on Monday evening, was historically, these duties were historically assigned to the building commissioner, former building commissioner Joe Prondak. He left, and after that, we didn't delegate or designate these duties to anybody else. I retained them. There's forms on the website that if anybody has an ADA-related issue, to submit them, and they come to myself. This is pretty standard practice for municipalities to have somebody perform these duties as part of their role. It's often an administrator or somebody in the central office. A lot of the issues that I've seen in my experience have been more about program access than actual physical building access, so not necessarily dovetails directly with building commission necessarily. And I just wanted to add that the town is working on a self-evaluation and transition plan under ADA for all of our recreational facilities and conservation properties. So it's work that we're undertaking. That's thanks to a grant secured by Tim Zawinski. So it's work that's ongoing that we take seriously as it exists. And I think that's really it. Lastly, there isn't an existing position. There is not an existing ADA coordinator position in our personnel bylaws right now.
Satisfactory, Mr. Cocello? Or, yes, okay, very good. Then I don't think were there any other question for Ms. Agostino, or were you satisfied with your question right there? You're satisfied, very good. Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Lori Stillman, Precinct 2. First, I'd like to say that I support Katie Conlon's motion. Whenever there's some extra money and some good use for it, I think we should support it. So that's my first comment. But I rise to ask a question about the law budget, A3.
I'm sorry, Larry. I'm just going to ask that. I thought we were talking about the motion.
So my question actually to the moderator is, can I ask a question about the basic article now, or are we only limited to the amendments at hand?
At the moment, we're limiting to the amendment.
Okay, then I'll get up.
Then you'll pause.
In a moment. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Would you like to, perhaps, does the warrant committee chair have the warrant committee have a question? Does anyone else have a question on the motion to amend?
I think our question is to the numbers, is that the question is there, it's reducing from the 75,000 to the 50,000. The question is, should that be 60,380 instead?
We're starting at 60,000 because that was the green sheet tonight.
What's that? And that should be unchanged.
No.
Here, Jay, can you?
Let me explain. Your green sheet reduced from 75,380 to, let me look it up. It was 60,380. That's your motion before the body. Ms. Agostino is saying take that 60,380, reduce it by a further 10 to 50,380. Ms.
Moderator,
Agostino?
it was already reduced, though. It was reduced by the green sheet, and we're just using it for the two purposes of the amendment and 5,000 for the reserve. So you're correct. It should go.
All right.
He's
Ma'am?
got the right number, I think.
Ma'am, you were not clear to me. I have to rule this amendment out of order. You don't have this clear in a way that even I can understand it. I'm sorry.
The,
Please don't applause, folks. Please, ma'am. The purpose of asking for these complex things in writing is so that I can understand it, the warrant committee clerk can put it up there, and the body can understand it. And I've talked to you for 5 minutes, and I still don't understand it. And I don't want to take any more time from the body to get this right.
So you're going on record as just disagreeing that it's a mathematical, when I gave the numbers and the document over to the clerk, it was correct, and the chair of the warrant committee has reviewed it with his committee. The number is correct. They already reduced it on the green sheet to $60,380, so we shouldn't take another $10,000 and reducing it to $50,380. It's a simple arithmetic. And the motion was seconded.
I am sorry. That's not what you just described up here and what your numbers say. I cannot accept this amendment if it has not been written down clearly so even I can understand it, ma'am. I'm not trying to be difficult, but we can't take time to make this up on the fly. I'm sorry.
It's not on the fly because of what occurred Monday and Tuesday night with regards to ADA issues. You don't just put a hat on anyone. So, and which was confirmed yesterday by the U.S. Justice Department. And this amendment is to protect the town of Milton from fines.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I cannot accept amendments just being made up on the fly, and I still don't, it's not what you told me a few minutes ago, and the numbers here are different than what we just put up there.
So I would amend, since it was already seconded.
Ms. Agostino,
it has to be,
I don't want to debate this anymore, please.
it has to be ruled, since
I
it
am
was
ruling
amended.
that this amendment is out of order.
And so I rise to make an amended motion to $60,380. That's the only adjustment to the motion that was seconded.
We are already at $60,380.
Not on the screen.
Because all right, this is why we're not, ma'am, I'm not going to entertain this anymore. Please
It's
have a
all
seat.
documented for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason moderators across the Commonwealth ask for these things to be written down in writing and submitted in advance is so we can clearly understand the intent of the submitters. And at this point, I don't. And so I just want to make sure that if I can't understand it, I can't explain it to anybody here, and I don't think that's fair. So this is why I asked for these things in advance. So with that, we now have, if we could go back to the Madam Warrant Committee Clerk, could you go delete those red lines and restore the green sheet? This is the green sheet that was presented by the Warrant Committee. So that means it's the motion before the body. It was described by Ms. Conlon, it's supported by the Select Board, it's supported by the Warrant Committee. Now, Ms. Stillman, you have a question on the general government Article 11. Please.
Mr. Moderator, I was waiting before.
Oh, I didn't see you. I'm sorry, if you're not in the front row, I get confused. So yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. Sheila Varela, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8, sorry. I have a question on the law under general government. I want to ask if what is documented here, I guess either under professional and special services or claims, the 270 for the rest of this year and the 283.5, or the claims, covers our legal services now that we have a lawsuit against us because we're not in compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. And if it's not covered in those numbers, where is the money coming from? That's the second question. So A, is it covered in this? B, if it's not, what account in the town is it coming from? And C, can they speak to what they think the estimated cost over 24 and 25 is going to be to our budget?
So this is the cost of the legal fees for the lawsuit? Is that
Correct.
the question?
Yep.
So you want to know, is it covered under law?
Is it covered here? If it's not, the anticipated cost, that they've figured it out. If it's not, then what fund is it coming out of if it's not covered under this?
And then how much?
And then how much?
Understand.
Please.
Vice Chair Musto, is this Mr. Milano? Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize, as Vice Chair Roxanne Musto, I'd like to recognize Mr. Milano to answer this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nicholas Milano, Town Administrator. So I'll probably go a little backwards, but the town, the Select Board has negotiated a fixed fee with Goodwin Proctor, Attorney Kevin Martin, to provide services through the oral argument at the Supreme Judicial Court in the amount of $275,000. So that will cover.
Could you just get a little closer to the mic?
I'm sorry. In the amount of $275,000, it's a fixed fee to cover all expenses up to and through oral arguments at the Supreme Judicial Court. That expenses, as it's a fixed fee, will be covered in the fiscal '24 budget. And so that covers that. It won't be in the fiscal '25 budget. I'll just note that the engagement letter between the town and Goodwin notes that if there are additional services that aren't anticipated, those might incur additional costs at an hourly rate. But our expectation is that the $275,000 that has been negotiated should cover all services in terms of the arguments at the Supreme Judicial Court on the MBTA Communities lawsuit.
Clear, ma'am? Follow up?
Do you know what the hourly rate would be?
Need a minute? Would you be okay if we, Ms. Stillman asked her question? Ms. Stillman?
That's my question.
Yes. What's that? She asked your question? Oh, okay.
So the fixed fee is $275, as I mentioned. If there are additional services outside what has been agreed, senior partners, which Attorney Martin is, would be $940 an hour. Junior partners, $840 an hour. Counsel and senior associates, $725 an hour. Mid-level associates, $660. Junior associates, $550. And that, yes, as Mr. Zoll was reminding me, these are reduced rates for their government services.
We okay, Ms. Varela?
Yeah, some of my other.
Follow up?
Yeah, one more follow-up. So just to confirm, so the total, which is $370,125, that $275 that you just spoke of is covered in that amount?
No, it's paid for out of FY24. It's not funded out of this FY25 warrant tonight.
Oh, okay, all right. So, because you just, this fiscal year? So we did it this year. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mullen, you're recognized.
Peter Mullen, Precinct 2. I wonder if the town administrator could tell us how they were able to find $275,000 in the fiscal year 24 budget to make this payment.
Ms. Musto, should we recognize Mr. Milano? Sir, you're recognized.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. We expect to cover a good portion of it out of the existing legal budget, but we expect to have enough funds by the end of the fiscal year, whether through reserve fund or the appropriations transfers, to fully fund it. So we expect to fully cover the $275,000 with fiscal '24 monies.
Very good. Seeing no one else sitting before the body, this is just a majority vote. We will open up the, you want to speak, Ms. Musto? Yes, please. Sorry, I was trying to save you a trip, but please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Roxanne Musto, Precinct 5 Town Meeting Member, Vice Chair of the Select Board. I just wanted to take this opportunity to point out for us that the Select Board budget, we're so lucky and fortunate that we have somebody in this town that is providing landscaping services free of charge for our Council on Aging and our Town Hall and also the library. And they do a beautiful job, and he's actually a town meeting member. So I would really like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. John Driscoll, who's sitting there in the back. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you. David Cornish, Precinct 10. I had a question about another line item under number 7. Being a veteran, I'm all in favor of veterans' benefits, but I was wondering why the line item benefits rose over 300% in 24, 25 over 23.
Why they rose so much in 24 from 23.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
That's
wasn't
clear.
a member last year, so I wouldn't.
Yes. Mr. Milano? Or, yes, thanks, Ms. Musto. Ms. Milano? Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So just the fiscal 23 number, which is the 29,384, is what was actually expended that fiscal year. The budgeted amount each year is $100,000. So the budgeted amount in fiscal 24 is $100,000. The budgeted amount in fiscal 25 is $100,000. It's an expense that fluctuates year to year. So fiscal 23 was a little lower than usual. We don't often expend the full $100,000, but $100,000 is available for these benefits. These are cash benefits under the Chapter 115 veterans benefit that is pretty unique in the state, in the Commonwealth, in the country, excuse me, that we have here in Massachusetts for veterans.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll now go to the poll. So if we could open up the poll. All in favor of Article 11, as you saw proposed in the green sheet, the motion before the body, please signify by 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. And Rob, would you let me know when the votes are in? If they got done early? The vote is unanimous. Article 12 was passed by the consent agenda, so we'll go to Article 13. What I'd like to do at this point is recognize Mr. Tom Callahan, the chair of the Community Preservation Act Committee. Sir, you're recognized. And if we could put his presentation up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. My name is Tom Callahan. I'm a Precinct 4 town meeting member and chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and here to speak briefly on Articles 13 and 14. In 2020, Milton voters overwhelmingly approved the Community Preservation Act, and in 2021, town meeting approved the establishment of the Community Preservation Committee. The role of the committee is to prioritize the needs of the town across 3 categories: community housing, historic preservation, and open space and recreation. Funding for eligible projects comes from 2 sources: a 1% surcharge on our property taxes, with exemptions for lower income residents, and a distribution from the statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund. Next slide. In Article 13, you will be asked to reserve over $1 million in funding for FY25, but I want to focus our recommendations for spending this year contained in Article 14. Next slide. We received applications for funding last spring and spent the summer and fall meeting with applicants. Next slide. Our recommendations are for projects all across town and represent an important investment in our people, our resources, and our future. We are recommending to, next slide, please, thank you. We are recommending to town meeting funding in 3 categories: $400,000 in community housing, $301,701 in historic preservation projects, and $466,500 in open space and recreation projects. With this funding, we are making major investments in the Pope's Pond area with a playground at Peverly Park, improvements to trails around the pond, and a study of a possible Pine Tree Brook Walk. We are also making multiple investments in East Milton with improvements to the baseball field at Andrews Park, as well as a water station in Andrews proposed by the East Milton Neighborhood Association, a window study at the Milton Art Center, and a study of the Neponset Estuary. On the slides are examples of some of the projects, just some of the projects we are recommending this year. Next slide, please. Renovations to the historic barn and carriage house at the Forbes House Museum. Next slide. Preservation work at our beloved Milton Cemetery. Next slide. New dugouts at Kelly Field for both softball and baseball. And next slide. A Neponset Estuary study that is the beginning of a multi-year planning and implementation project that will explore ways Milton can protect and activate this waterfront resource in the Cortlandt Circle, Thistle Ave neighborhood. Next slide. A feasibility study on a proposed 3-mile Pine Tree Brook Walk. Next slide. And finally, funding to support 36 affordable apartments for seniors at Winter Valley. Before I close, 3 final points. Next slide. We want to take this opportunity to summarize the first 2 years of CPA fund investments. We have recommended over $2.8 million in project funding, with 29% of funding going to historic preservation, 33% for community housing, 38% for open space and recreation. Next slide, please. We want to thank all of our talented and dedicated members for the hours spent poring over the applications and meeting with the proponents of these projects. Our Vice Chair, Jenny Russell, Treasurer Pete Jackson, Ted Carroll, Joe Duffy, Wendy Garpo, Kathleen O'Donnell, Cheryl Tagayas, and Linda Weld form out the team, as well as Rob Levash, our former chair, who got us off to such a great start last year. We have a great group, and it is an honor to serve with each of you. And finally, perhaps most importantly, we invite all of you, town meeting members and those watching at home tonight, to come with us with your ideas. This is your Community Preservation Act. Visit our page on the town's website to learn more about the act. Come to us with projects that you want to see in your neighborhood. You can reach us at cpc@townofmilton.org. Your tax dollars and your votes support CPA. We want to hear from you, and you still have time for this year, too. The deadline for initial eligibility applications is May 31st, so you still have time to submit a proposal for this coming funding round. We urge you to support both articles. Thank you.
So it's recommended that the town vote to appropriate the CPA funds to the total budget of $1,050,000. Anyone wish to speak to this article? Seeing none, this is a majority vote submitted by the Community Preservation Committee. We can open up the poll. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The article passes with a vote of 213 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. We'll go to Article 14 on page 32. Recommended that the town vote to approve the projects and amounts shown in the following tabulation under the grant CPA project funding recommendations for a total budget of $1,167,571. Does anyone, this is now the detail of that appropriation you just made. Does anyone wish to speak to this article? Goes by majority vote. Seeing none, we will open up the poll. Again, 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion carries, vote of 212 to 1. Article passes. Articles 15, 16, 17, 18 were all passed by consent. Article 19 was pulled. Would anyone like to speak to Article 19? Yes, ma'am. I see you. Ms. Cronin, you're recognized.
Hi, Marita Manning Cronin, Precinct 4. I'm not against this amount of money, but Precinct 5 town meeting member talked about our roads. I would like the list of streets that are proposed for the Chapter 90. Historically, they have been listed in the warrant. Hasn't been for the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Vice Chair Musto.
Thank you, Vice Chair Roxanne Musto. I'd like to recognize Chase Berkeley, our DPW Director, to respond to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berkeley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chase Berkeley, Director of Public Works. So in terms of Article 19, the Chapter 90 funds are allocated to Milton through the Commonwealth, administered by Mass DOT. So $626,000 and change is a typical amount when the Chapter 90 program is funded at $200 million for the whole Commonwealth. So that number is determined by a weighted average that takes into account miles of road. Milton has 97, population and employment. So that is about 36 to 38% of our overall paving budget, the rest of it coming from the capital article that was approved the other night. So listing the streets under this article would, it wouldn't match up to the funding because we often think of paving in terms of construction season and not fiscal year, even though the budget is a fiscal year budget. It's capital, it can overlap between fiscal years, so we think, what can we accomplish between April and October typically? And so in that case, I'll give you the list, but just recognize that it doesn't all relate to this article. So it's Clapp Street, Walnut Street, the intersection of Brook Road, Reedsdale, and Central Ave, which is just outside the Pierce Middle School, Randolph Ave near Lodge, Governor Belcher, Hawthorne Road, Virginia, Briarfield, Thompson Lane, Lantern Lane, Pond Street, Sunnyside, Crown Street, Essex Road, and Canton Ave. That's Canton Ave near Guile. So again, likely some of those streets will slip into the following construction season.
Thank you. Satisfactory, Ms. Cronin? Very good. Yes, Mr. Furs, you're recognized.
Thank you, Brian Furs. I just wanted to thank Mr. Berkeley for providing the information that I'm about to give to you. There is a report that comes out that he can share, I'm sure, with everybody. The last report was dated 2018, but our current road, and he could probably share this as easy as I could, but our current road network rating is a 67.7, which I assume out of 100 is a D.
And to maintain that rating, we need to be funding the roads at $1.1 million a year, which it looks like we're doing just above that. To get to a C- 70, we have to be at 2.2 million. But the overall crux of the question I asked the other night, which he was kind enough to get me the information immediately the next morning, is that we have, and this is just information I think is interesting as we look at our capital going forward, about 97 miles of roads. And as of this report, 2018, there's a $20 million backlog to maintain these roads. So, you know, simple math, if we're funding at $1.6 million, we're never going to get there. So as Capital Committee, Warrant Committee, and this body thinks about 25, 26, and beyond, as we're looking at different opportunities for bonding or overrides, I would encourage us to think about this really important part of our infrastructure that is only going to continue to get worse if we're not able to keep up with it and maintain it. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Agostino, you're recognized.
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Precinct 9, and Chair of the Commission on Disability. I rise to thank both of the previous speakers. In the past, the warrant, the streets are listed, so I hope the warrant committee will take that into consideration. But of course, once again, I want to thank the DPW director and the workers. I don't know if people are aware of this, but when they do renovate the roads, they also must make the sidewalks handicap accessible. So that is an added expense, but hopefully all of you are enjoying the extra ramps, but it does reduce the amount of funds to do more and more streets. So we're just going to have to, as it was just noted, we're going to have to find whether or not we're going to need an override to try to do more streets, or, because my street's 43 years old. Streets only last 30 years. And it's not handicap accessible, so I couldn't even walk down the sidewalks. Thank you very much to the DPW director. His help is always appreciated.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'll just summarize. Article 19 recommended that the sum of $626,278 be appropriated for the purpose set forth in this article. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer is authorized to issue, with the approval of the select board, bonds or secured notes. So this is a bonding article. The result of that is it requires a 2/3 vote. I see no one else has risen to speak to this. If we could open up the poll, it will require a 2/3 vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. Thank you. The article passes 215 to 2. I declare a 2/3 vote. Article 20 was passed by consent. So was Article 21. Article 22 we passed yesterday night. Article 23 was passed by consent, as was 24 and 25. That brings us to Article 26, which again is a green sheet. If we could put up the green sheet for 26, ma'am. It's recommended that the town appropriate the amount shown in the following tabulations under the heading recommended FY25. Schools, $67,225,230,000, and that to meet said appropriation, the sum of $67,225,230 be raised from the tax levy. With this, I would like to recognize the Chair of the School Committee, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Lizzie Carroll, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3, Chair of the School Committee. Before we present the details about our budget, proposal, I'd like to just make a few brief acknowledgments. I'd like to thank members of the Warrant Committee and the Select Board for your partnership in getting us to this point of a consensus budget proposal for the schools. I would like to acknowledge our newly elected member of the school committee, Amanda Serio, and would also like to acknowledge and thank Beverly Ross Denny, town meeting member from Precinct 2. As our Finance Committee Chair for the past year, she played a big role in developing this budget that you're about to see. I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Glenn Pavlicek, who is, as you probably know, our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations for Milton Public Schools. He's, as we heard on Monday night, a Precinct 10 town meeting member for 25 years. And I'm acknowledging him because he is retiring for a second time from the Milton Public Schools. He first retired from this role in 2020. As you know, he has dedicated years of service to the town of Milton, not just for Milton Public Schools and as a town meeting member, but also a former member of the Warrant Committee, the former School Building Committee, and the School Committee. He returned out of retirement in 2022 in an interim capacity to support the Milton Public Schools through these past really important 2 years where he provided a great deal of stability, especially in our first year with our new superintendent, Dr. Peter Burrows. So thank you, Dr. Pavlicek, for all your work. You'll hear from him shortly as he presents details of our budget proposal. Let's acknowledge him now, though. Sorry, I know you hate this. All right, thanks everybody. And with that, I'd like to ask that our superintendent, Dr. Peter Burrows, be recognized to begin our budget presentation.
Dr.
Thank
Burrows,
you.
yes, sir. Ma'am, Dr. Burrows, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Let me get the presentation up here. All right, so I'm going to start by talking a little bit about how we've approached the budget this year, maybe differently than, or definitely differently than we have, I think, in years past. I'm going to then hand it off to Dr. Pavlicek, who's going to take all of us through the numbers. I do want to thank all of you for being a part of the development of this budget. As you know, this budget is our budget. We approached it that way. We had great input from both elected officials and citizens, staff, students, everyone. So this is a budget that is shared with many hands. So our vision for the development of this budget, the first thing that's really important in school budgeting and that's challenging given the constructs of what we do here every year is having a sustained long-term approach to budgeting. And in a school system where you're looking at not adding and taking away year to year based on how much money you have, but you're looking at building systems and structures that support academic excellence and what students need, you have to be thinking sequentially beyond just how much money do we have and what are we going to do with the money we have this year. So that's something that as I started working with our central office team, and as we started to look at where we were and did an analysis of our staffing, we really kind of kept in mind, where do we want to get to in FY25? We're also thinking about FY26 and FY27 as we're putting together this budget. So this budget that you'll be voting on tonight is not just this point in time, but it also has a vision for the work that we'll be doing over the next years, and looking at our staffing models, looking at our curricula and making changes and doing the work that we need to do the absolute best that we can for our students. Working with our staff this year, one of the things that we really focused on was, instead of looking at Milton as 6 schools, we really thought of it as one learning community. And that's really important when you're talking about limited resources and looking at how to maximize those resources across all schools. We worked really closely with our principals, and instead of the principals coming in past years, principals would come to the central office and would say, these are the positions I need, and then we'd kind of look at them and say, okay, this one seems more important than this one. We really kind of talked about what do we as a district need, and looked at, are there ways that we can share positions? Are there things that we need to do, again, thinking about a multi-year approach? Are there positions that we need to put in place this year in 1 or 2 schools, and then shift and move things around in a following year? So that was the approach as we started to build this budget. And I think we had, as it crystallized and as we came to our first draft, we felt pretty solid as a collective in terms of the work that we had put together. And I think that kind of showed in presentations that we've done from there forward. So this was shared recently. We have some hard copies. I can actually get them afterwards, after tonight, and leave them out if folks want to take them home. This priority report is work that I've done over the course of this year to identify the work that we need to do collectively together to move Milton Public Schools forward, to make change, to both continue the great work that we're doing and really lean in on the things that we need to do to make sure every student is getting what they need. In terms of the budget and this document, we're currently working on an implementation plan from this priority report. This is kind of the learning, this report, both in what I learned from talking with community, with staff, with students over the course of the first half of this year, along with a pretty in-depth analysis from our full 30-member leadership team, that's principals, directors of curriculum, et cetera, who looked at all of the different parts of our system and said, these are the things that we think are strong here, and these are things that we really need to build together. This is going to be the roadmap for the work that we do in the years ahead and the change that we make. And we really are looking at the budget not as the positions that we have and will continue, but we're looking at funding this vision. So that is how we're approaching the budget. As I said, this is my first kind of the budget I've worked on in year 1, and I'm excited about the work that I think we're going to be doing in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30. Okay, anyway. So I want to ask Dr. Pawlicek to now come up and take us through the numbers, and then we'll be open for questions.
Dr. Pawlicek, you're recognized.
Thank you. This is a presentation which in various forms has been presented to the Warrant Committee, the School Committee, several times during the year with a couple minor edits to it. So I'll move through it relatively quickly because it's, for the most part, things people have seen before. And there's only so many times I can give my final budget presentation. Try not to make a habit of it. The assumptions in this were we started as a level service budget, that all existing staff would be rolled over into fiscal 25. We wouldn't be adding any staff, contractual obligations included, and those positions, as we've talked about before, that were funded either by the ESSER grants or ARPA funding would be maintained for this year. So that was our definition of level services. We do this coming year what we're doing this year. There were a fair number of ESSER and ARPA positions, as we've talked about over the last few years in terms of these funding for different, initially COVID-related, but otherwise learning loss-related positions. We had a preschool coordinator that was partially funded by ARPA, kindergarten aides used to be only 0.8 FTE, which is part of a day. That now they're full-time. We added an ADA 504 team chair, someone who deals with all the ADA issues for students as opposed to for staff. A full-time nurse and 2 part-time nurses. Nurses has been a huge issue over the last several years. A middle school adjustment counselor, elementary math interventionist, math high school and sped teacher, 2 BCBAs, behavioral analysts dealing with emotional issues of students and so forth. And in mid this year, there was the select board voted to allocate some ARPA funds for an additional school bus to eliminate some of the waiting lists and overcrowding with schools. As a result, if you look at the budget, our general fund budget was last year was $61.5 million, but we had $1.1 million in ARPA positions. So really the budget that we're starting with was a $62.7 million budget. The cost to maintain that is almost $67 million. It's a large increase, 6.8%, but to the general fund it looks even larger because you're absorbing all those ESSER funds. Why? There are 2 pieces of it. Staff increase went up by 5.8%, and some non-salary costs went up even higher at 12.6%. So let me look at those. The salary increases went up primarily due to special education instructional assistants. We've added, we went from 94 to 104 special ed aides over the last year. In fact, right now it's 109. As students get put on individual education plans and aides are called for, it's a requirement by the law for us to supply them. So this is sort of a bill for us in some sense dealing with aides. That is the bulk of our increase. IDEA funds from the federal government used to fund this. We got about $1.3 million a year from the federal government to fund these positions. That number hasn't changed in 15 years. So where it used to fund our special education aides, it now funds roughly a third of them, because our special education aid budget is roughly $4 million. So when the cost of these go up, a larger portion of it goes to the general fund because the federal funding for it just has been stagnant for 15 years. So it appears even larger than it is. Once you back out that one cost, $770,000 in extra special education aides, the staff increase is a 4.5% increase. Historically, steps and lanes for our staff is about 2 to 2.2%. They got a 2.5% COLA this year. That number is completely, the 4.5% is completely expected from us. But the extra money for the special education aides is what drove up the salary costs in this level service budget. In the non-salary costs, which is a much smaller portion of our budget, 85% of our budget is staff. Special education out-of-district costs have been the killer this year. The state, after our budget was approved for this year, approved a 16% raise in tuition for out-of-district special education schools, after our budget was built. So that was $900,000 additional money that we are dealing with this year. We put in for some reserve extraordinary circuit breaker money to try to make up some of this. We've just gotten an award for some of that. We're working it through this year to get through here, but that's going to be an ongoing cost. It was unbudgeted this year. We managed to get some extra state aid to get us through this year, but we have to budget for it next year because that's just the cost. We spend roughly $6 million in out-of-district special education tuitions for roughly 65 kids. And if you do the math, it's $100,000 a student on the average. That is the predominant part of our non-salary budget. That and the additional school bus that we're absorbing from ARPA. Other than that, our non-salary costs are only up 2.2%, which, given inflation, is where we are. Just again, by category, district administration and legal is only 3% of the budget. Instruction and special education are 74%, but your curriculum coordinators, building administrators, guidance, nursing, transportation. We are very student-oriented in this budget. As was mentioned in the green sheet, this is the one part we haven't done before. With the additional money being allocated by the House Ways and Means, and as of yesterday, in Chapter 70 in unrestricted general government aid, the Senate Ways and Means budget, the green sheet is recommending an allocation of an additional $245,000 to the school budget, plus money to the general insurance budget to pay for benefit costs. We intend to use this for 3 positions, 2 of them at the middle school. Our current 8th grade, as you can read, is being supplanted by a 6th grade that is going to be 75 to 80 students larger.
Dr. Pavlicek, 3 minutes.
Yep, my next to last slide. So we are looking at a major increase. That bubble of elementary school students that we've talked about for years is really pushing into the middle school and filling the middle school up. We have current 8th grade teachers who are teaching exploratory classes. They will not be able to do next year because they're going to have too many 8th graders to do their core classes. So we need to hire 2 additional staff for peers. And we are going to hire 1 additional reading interventionist to deal especially in the grades 4 and 5. We have interventionists, reading interventionists that do in the primary grades, 1, 2, 3, but we really want to build that support more into 4 and 5. So the $245,000 would be funding these 3 positions. And so your recommendation in the green sheet is the $67,225. And with that, thank you, and we'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, you're recognized. Excuse me.
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Precinct 9, Chair of the Commission on Disability. Mr. Pavlicek, thank you very much, and I want to know if I was dreaming, because as the screen flashed, I missed seeing it. So the question is, did you state, or was I dreaming, that the Milton Public Schools hired an ADA coordinator? And if so, is it a full-time, part-time position? And I can then ask my follow-up question. Thank you.
Question clear, sir?
Yes. The ADA coordinator, 504 coordinator, is a full-time position. They deal with all students who have ADA accommodations. They work like a guidance counselor, team chair, but they are they're specific to students who are on 504s, not IEPs. So we have team chairs who deal with the individual education plans of students with special needs. This is the equivalent of that for our students who have 504 plans, and it is a full-time position.
So I don't know if my follow-up
Please.
question is to Mr. Pavlicek, because he's fully aware of the issues involved, or if it would be the head of the school committee, whoever would be most educated on this. A few years ago, the Commission on Disability did write both to the school department as well as to every head of every department, because the school department was written to because parents had brought it to our attention that some of their ADA concerns were not being addressed. We did not get a written confirmation. We could not locate, and I've done searches through all the documents we have for ADA coordinator or anything to do with this important, very important issue. And is this completely, if it's a new position and it's full-time, because outside of the schools, there may not be that many issues, and a lot of them, since the schools own so much of the properties that we have ADA accessibility concerns with, would it be possible to begin discussions with town officials to potentially share and have a qualified ADA coordinator to address? I mean, there aren't many reasonable requests, but it would protect the town. So I don't know who you want to allow to answer that. He certainly is well-informed, and congratulations if you're going to really retire this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, Dr. Pavlicek, recognized.
The 504 ADA coordinator that was referenced here is strictly for students. So it's strictly to deal with their 504-88 accommodation plans. The Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Human Resources is technically the ADA coordinator for the school system. So issues with accessibility of buildings or accessibility of, or issues that staff may have with accessibility would go through the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Human Resources. So that's technically the ADA coordinator for the system, but this position monitors all the ADA plans for students.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Jeannie Burns, town meeting member, Precinct 3. Can I ask a question of the warrant committee about this article?
Yes.
About their comment?
Yes?
I just had a question about wanting a more robust approach to the verification of residency and what that's based on. Is it based on data or rumors? I have 2 children, 8th grade, 10th grade. I've done the proof of residency multiple times. I think it's pretty robust. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but of course it's important. But what is this based on, and what does the school committee think of this?
Chair Humphries, you're recognized.
Dave Humphries, Chairman of the Warrant Committee. Excuse me. Our concerns that were raised, and we brought this up at a Warrant Committee meeting, concerns that the Warrant Committee has with regards to the degree to which residency is verified by the schools, is that we were concerned that the guarantees that were being made to us during our conversations with the school as we went through the budget process were not satisfactorily, they were not acceptable, and we were not satisfied with them, and we would like to have more, and that we would like to see that more carefully examined. So as far as data, we're not really provided with data. I know that there were warrant committee members who were asking and did not receive. So that's where I'm at as chairman of the warrant committee, giving that response. I would like to be able to give a more detailed, data-driven response, but we were not provided satisfactorily in accordance with our requests. That's my answer. Thank you.
I think the second question was, what did the school committee think of it, Dr. Burrows? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So as I explained to the warrant committee when this question came up, we are doing a full review of all of our policies this year, and it's going to take quite a long time. One of the policies we are reviewing is our residency policy. We are right now in kind of first reading of that policy. We do, in terms of our process for residency, as was shared, we do have in a comparison to our peers and neighbor districts, and part of the process of building this, analyzing our policy was doing a review of what's happening in BPS, what's happening across the greater Boston area, to be sure that we're doing, we have a policy that is right where it needs to be. And so we are, as I mentioned, we're close to the finish line with that policy. We do have a residency coordinator who is in charge of working with central administration, and there's a team that works on this. We both want to be sure that every student in our schools is in our town. That's really important, and it's a financial impact. We also want to be sure that we're respecting all of our residents and citizens and doing it in a way that is affirming, I think, as a learning organization. So those are things that we're doing. I feel confident that the revision of the policy is going to be strong and is going to hold up to any policy that it's compared to across the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Dr. Burrows. Mr. Bentley, you're recognized.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Bentley, Precinct 7, and proud Milton High 2018 grad. Go Wildcats. So, I knew that was going to get a few applause. But anyway, so I had a couple of questions for the school committee or superintendent. I don't know who would be the point person for this question, but my first question just involved the exploratory classes for the middle school and what those entailed. And my second question, it sort of related to another article, Article 29, regarding the Blue Hills Technical School. And I see that there was a decrease in enrollment this year. And there are a lot of questions nowadays about the value of college and university. So I was just wondering if they could talk about like why they're possibly seeing that decrease in enrollment, if that makes sense, and what efforts you're making in promoting it as an alternative compared to the high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Pavlicek.
With regard to the exploratory classes at the middle school, basically that's a term we use for anything other than your basic core classes, English, history, math, science. It's the other 3 courses other than the basic 4 that students take. The high school, it's a little different at the high school. High school, we call them electives because at the high school, students try to choose what they interest them. At the middle school, unfortunately, because of the basically overcrowding and limited resources, it's more what fits their schedule than unfortunately what their choices are. It's a balance of both. But the exploratory is just a chance for students to take things. It's the art, the music, all the various different things that they can take other than their core courses. As for the Blue Hills, you're correct in noticing that the enrollment is down. We had 51 students from Milton who attended the Blue Hills a year ago. There's only 34 this year. They choose. It is a choice by the rising 9th graders as to where they want to go. I will say that we had several more students choose Norfolk Agricultural School this year, which is the 3rd public high school that Milton students can attend. Most people don't realize we actually have 3 public high schools that you're entitled to go to, us, the Blue Hills, and Norfolk Aggie. We have approximately 10 students at Norfolk Agricultural. We are seeing this year, for instance, rising from 5th to 6th grade, we are seeing fewer students leave the system for private schools at the 6th grade than we have in the past. So we are retaining more students of our own, which we think is a good thing. I'm not going to run out and try to advertise for other schools to take the students. We'd love them all to come here. So people are choosing us a little more right now. We'll see if that continues. But that's really why.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Moderator.
can pinch that trigger below and lift it up. It's at the stem. There you go.
Thank you. Spencer Kyle Johnson, Town Meeting Member Precinct 10. I just want to, if we don't mind bringing up the language again about the residency requirement, I wanted to press on that a little bit further because the comment was very explicit that there is a lack, use of definite article seemed important to me, that there is a lack of robust measures. So I would like further clarification on what the evidence for that is, because that seems, I'm just asking for clarification, but that seems different to me than saying that there were questions or a lack of explanation. That implies actual evidence of a lack of a robust process. And I, again, not meaning to be nitpicky or denigrating, but I think it's important that we have clarity about that, because if there is a problem, we should have an open conversation about it. If not, I think we should be careful about spreading unnecessary rumors.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Humphreys, you're recognized.
Thank you. My response to that is going to have to be bounded by things that I've learned in confidence. When you talk to people in the town and they tell you what they have observed themselves, of who their friends are, who their children's friends are, where the children's friends live, where they have dropped their children off to play dates and parties. Though I myself was not there, when I accept those representations that are made to me as true, that's testimony of an individual. That is evidence. So I can't say that I myself have observed these things, but I can accept what someone has said to me as true. So we pushed on this with the school department. We asked questions. We had people that we wanted to talk to. Those people were not made available to us. That happened. That has led to this body's conclusion that there is an issue that we were not able to address to our satisfaction to make the determination that there was not a problem. Prove me wrong. Because I could flip that around the other way and say, we're asking these questions. We're the warrant committee. We want to be satisfied. We deserve, on behalf of the town, to evaluate this and make a determination. So this is a two-way street. On behalf of the town, on behalf of the taxpayers who foot the bill, we want to be able to verify that the townspeople are paying for students from Milton. I'd be happy to be proven wrong. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Musto, you're recognized. Ms. Denny, did you want to speak? If you could come to the front, I have a hard time telling third row or second row, so if you'd like to speak, come up front. Mr. Musto?
All right. Hi, Mike Musto, Precinct 5, town meeting member. I just have a few quick questions. Number one, just out of curiosity, I understand the minimum per pupil went to 104. Do we actually get more than the minimum, or do we only get the minimum? Just, this kind of came up at work today, actually, in terms of different towns and whatnot. So can you clarify that?
Sorry, Mr. Musto, I can't hear you. If you could.
I know, my brother tells me to be a little louder, so sorry, guys. But I guess I'll repeat for the edification of the members. The per pupil went from 30 to 104. Do we actually get the minimum of 104? Do we get a little more than the minimum? Can you just clarify that? Thanks. And then,
is that clear?
Would I be allowed to ask another question after?
Okay.
Thanks.
Dr. Pavlicek.
We are in the state is in the fourth year of implementing what's called the Student Opportunity Act, where they're changing the funding formula for the Chapter 70 funds.
Dr. Pavlicek, if you get a little closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. The state is in the fourth year of a six-year phase-in of the Student Opportunity Act, which is changing the basic funding formula for Chapter 70. For the past couple of years, we have gotten above the minimum amount that you referred to. This year, the governor proposed a minimum per pupil increase of $30 a student. The House and Senate have both recommended 104. This year, we're just getting the 104 per student extra above last year's Chapter 70. We're not getting an additional bump from the Student Opportunity Act this year. We have for the past several.
Okay, thank you. And then just a quick little follow-up in terms of, let's call it, I don't want to say curriculum, just sort of some of the needs that were expressed. I'm really glad, thanks for the presentation, really glad that we are funding different positions that do seem needed. And I think, again, just for the edification of the members, I look at, for example, like the reading interventionist position, and that's really promising. I'm glad to see that we're funding that, but just, I think it helps people to not just see like the title of a position, but can you just explain like, hey, what is the benefit of that and how it's going to help the kids and so on and so forth? Like, I just want to provide you an opportunity to say like, here's all the good that we're doing, okay?
Is that clear? Yes.
The reading interventionists without getting too technical, when we identify students who are beginning to have trouble with reading, we want to nip that sort of in the bud before they get into a position where we have to go into special needs or something like this and have to provide more services. It's much easier to prevent than it is to try to cure things. So the purpose of the reading interventionists is to take students who have been identified either by their teachers, or generally by their teachers, as needing a little extra. And what they do is they work with them either individually or in small groups for, say, 4 or 5 weeks in order to just push them back up and get them going again and get them back on track, and then they move on to other children and so forth. So it's not, for instance, a reading teacher who they go to a classroom and they're there for 45 minutes a day for the rest of the year. These are sort of push it or pull out services where we really are trying to address needs as they begin to become apparent in the ed speak, the tier 1 interventions, for those who like ed speak. But it's at that basic level.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Ross-Denny, I think you were next.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
it's one of the first times I'm close enough to the mic. Beverly Ross-Denny, town meeting member, precinct 2. I would like to make a comment and share some feedback about what Warrant Committee Chair Dave Humphreys just shared about. And I didn't think I even touched it. I'll hold on to it. How about that? So the real issue here is, why do we think that our families don't live here? I am very fortunate to have 3 children in the Milton Public Schools who've been invited to parties all over the Boston metro area in towns I've never heard of until I punned my GPS. And it never occurred to me a single day that it wasn't a grandparent or an extended family member, a cousin, a vacation rental. It never occurred to me that they were committing residency fraud. And I think for those of us who had the great fortune of meeting with the Warrant Committee this year and being asked questions about residency, one of the opportunities that was shared with me is it's cost savings. If we were able to find all of those kids who were inappropriately living in Milton, we would save all this money. The reality is, they're looking for certain people in certain neighborhoods, and there is absolutely no basis for this accusation. If we want to, say this, if we want to save money, or we need to make money, we shouldn't be paying attorney's fees to break the law and find a way to defend it in the Supreme Court, or focus on an override. But I don't want Milton families being unfairly targeted because of someone's baseless accusations. My children, I have submitted my utility bills, my tax bills, every time my child had to enroll or change schools. So it's not that the Milton Public Schools doesn't have a policy. It just doesn't meet the narrative of certain people in this town who do not welcome everyone who is here. I just ask that all of us, as someone mentioned, like day one, we are all neighbors. I don't want anyone coming to any one of my neighbors accusing them of not belonging. I don't want them stopping their children. I don't want them calling in to rat them out, because you know what? It took a lot to get here. Just be kind and be respectful. And if you're not happy with who your neighbors are, move someplace else.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hopefully I don't drop the mic.
Ma'am, that was walking right up to the line. So, if you don't like who your neighbors are, that's walking right up to the line. Thank you. Now, Ms. Hodlin, I think you were next, and then Ms. Varela.
Christine Hodlin from Precinct 2. I own a 2-family on 79 Aberdeen Road, and we have rented to many families over the years. And each one of those families that has had children in the public schools has had to contact us to verify that they live in the house, that they have a lease, that they have utility bills, and many, many other things that they've had to provide to prove their residency. My son currently lives in the house, and he and his wife had to do that this year. Their name is Hodlin. Not that there's a lot of us, but they belong there, and their kids go to the public schools. So I just want to be one of the examples that you hear from that verify that this is being done. In the past, we've actually been called by the superintendent, not the current one, in the past to verify that the information that was sent in by our tenants is valid. So I just want to be one of the examples that sees that it is working, and I haven't seen any where it isn't.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Varela.
Sheila Varela, Town Meeting Minute, Precinct 8. So I was on the school committee when we put in the residency verification. So, and it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, just to follow up what Ms. Hodlin said, and Ms. Ross-Denny, that when your child enters the public schools at either the pre-K program or kindergarten, you do the proof of residency with the documentations, and then in middle, and then in high. Now, that's there. I have had 2 children go through the public schools. There are parents that divorce. There are single mothers or single fathers, just single parents, and kids some nights might stay with their grandparents on Tuesday and Thursday if their mom's an overnight nurse and works a shift and they live in Canton, they live in Dorchester, and they might sleep there and bring them in and things like that. Same what Ms. Ross-Denny said, sometimes you pick them up or you drop them off after a soccer game or whatever, but they have residency here, and their families proved it, and we have a policy. So for the comments in the warrant to say that we are not doing our due diligence so that we can be look about cost containment and crossing every T and dotting every I for money-wise, we're doing that work. And I do think that getting this kind of language in for a chair of the warrant committee to talk about scuttlebutt or what he sees or hears on the street, I just think, to Mr. Walker's point at the beginning of the night as a chair of the warrant committee, it's inappropriate verbiage and not dignified for this body. Thank you.
Sir, you'll be the last voice on this topic. Yeah, you're the last speaker on this subsection of the school budget, please.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, my name is Buba from Precinct 1. I just want to understand, before I get in the red zone, what line were you talking about, sir?
I was just saying, you'll be the last speaker about...
No, sorry, before, when Ms. Ross was speaking, what is the line you were talking about? I don't want to cross it.
That someone is uncomfortable with who their neighbors are, implying differences.
So if I understand, that was a red line, but then the statement from the warrant committee was okay.
Sir?
I'm just asking.
Just make your point, sir, please. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So I just want to say I moved into Milton in 2018. So thanks for welcoming me. This is my day 3 in the committee here, in the meeting here, and I don't know if there's turning back, but this is very discouraging because we have a warrant committee that will make a statement like that, written black on white, and it is accepted by everyone. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand how this should be allowed, Mr. Moderator. I don't know who kind of corrects those statements, but this should be a case of defamation or some case of, there should be a case against it. It shouldn't be allowed. Because we're having a statement, there was a question made, we're having a statement that has no basis. So who can show me or who can give me a case of, a case where there was proven there was no residency. Like I haven't heard of a case recently. There's a policy in place that is shared. instead of pointing out the gaps in the policy, we're not satisfied. But what's the measure to say we're not satisfied? This should be simple. It's like management. So I don't understand why we have to spend time on this and we accept this statement. I think if this is how the Warrant Committee works, we should review the bylaws of the committee and how the committee is selected. Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, we'll go to the vote. This requires a majority vote. All in favor signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion passes 206 to 8. We'll now proceed. Article 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32 were all passed by the consent agenda. We'll now go to Article 33, for which we have a green sheet. And this is the companion to the story that you heard under general government that was explained by Ms. Conlon. So with this, at this point, does anyone have any questions? If we could display the green sheet. Any questions on the change in Article 33? So I'll summarize. Recommended that the town appropriate the sum of now $265,000 for the reserve fund for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures for the 12-month period beginning July 1, 2024, et cetera. I see no one walking down. Very good. This is a majority-only article. If we could put up the vote. All in favor, please signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The article passes unanimously. Articles 34, 35, and 36 were all passed by the consent agenda. We'll then go to Article 37, which you can find on page 53. I won't read the entire detail, but this is to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws by adding a new chapter entitled Specialized Energy Code. It's recommended that the town vote no. With that, I'll recognize the chair of the Warrant Committee, Mr. Humphreys.
Good evening, Dave Humphreys, Chairman of the Warrant Committee. There's a lengthy comment here. We're going to have a presentation to summarize. What this is with regard to is the building code. And we currently have a building code that's in effect. And the question here is, do we voluntarily opt in to another building code? And the opting in is with regards to the specialized energy code, which regulates the design and construction of buildings to make them efficient to reduce greenhouse gases. So what this is this is a new building code that we have the choice to whether or not we would opt into to make mandatory on all new construction in town, to make them more efficient. It's a recommendation of the Warrant Committee that we not do this. Briefly, it's new, is that there's not a lot of experience in other towns with regards to the implementation to be able to assess the costs associated with it. There's some quirky issues with regards to the requirement to install solar panels when you have a fully electric home, when you have a dual fuel home, like say if you had a heat pump and were electric, that you would be required to install solar panels, but fully electric would not. It was quirky. No additional financial incentives to assist homeowners in doing this. And then in the background, what happens is when you have one of these, the code, it can be modified by the state. Like for instance, this coming July, our current code is going to be modified. We have no control over what those modifications are when they come. Oftentimes, we don't even have an expectation of what they might be. If we were to opt in to the specialized code, we would then be required, as part of our own code, to implement whatever future changes to the code are made at the state level. And in light of the confusion that generally causes with regards to implementation, it would be, in our opinion, would exacerbate the implementation of this specialized energy code. The opt-in part is that the uncertainty associated with that led the Warrant Committee to conclude that it would be prudent to wait, prudent to see, and to not adopt the code at this time. Thank you.
With that, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have a slide deck.
If you could introduce yourself as well.
Oh, yes. Well, good evening. My name is Alex Hasha. I'm a board member of Sustainable Milton, chair of the Climate Action Planning Committee, and resident of Precinct 9. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in support of adopting the specialized building code. Next slide, please. Climate change threatens our children's future, and the chance of dire impacts for humanity increases rapidly unless we dramatically decrease fossil fuel emissions by 2050. Massachusetts is leading the way to meet this challenge with practical solutions, and with the 2021 Climate Act legally committed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Achieving this goal requires starting now with technologies available today. So Massachusetts' strategy relies on promoting energy efficiency and electrification, which means transitioning from fossil fuels for electricity, to electricity for heating, cooking, and transportation. At the same time, enormous investments are being made to expand the supply and reliability of clean electricity. Next slide, please. Now, adopting the specialized building code is a critical piece of this puzzle. Buildings produced 45% of Milton's emissions in 2022. And this specialized code will help us stop adding to this problem by incentivizing all electric construction and lowering costs for fossil fuel buildings to convert to electricity in the future. A building that we build next year will still be standing in 2100, when a Massachusetts summer is projected to feel like a Georgia summer does today. It's not prudent to make construction choices based only on present and past conditions. Next slide, please. Now, Massachusetts, as the Warrant Committee Chair mentioned, allows communities to choose from 3 standard building codes that are based on the International Energy Conservation Code. This is a model code maintained by experts and stakeholders of the building industry and adopted by many states and municipal governments in the U.S. The stretch code includes and builds upon the base code, and the specialized code includes and builds upon the stretch code. Milton currently uses the stretch code, which was adopted by town meeting in 2010, enabling Milton to become a green community and qualify for over $1 million in state grants for energy projects over the last 14 years. Next slide, please. So the specialized building code is a targeted set of code updates introduced by the 2021 Climate Bill to align with Massachusetts' plan to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. All 3 codes are updated. All 3 codes are updated every 3 years through a public process to provide an up-to-date standard of best practices for energy efficiency and building safety. And if Article 37 is approved tonight, the specialized code would take effect in January 2025. Next slide, please. So what changes if we adopt this code? At a high level, all new buildings will either be all electric or they will be pre-wired to remove obstacles to future electrification. So with some exceptions for shading, new fossil fuel buildings, dual fuel is confusing, but if there's a fossil fuel heater or any other source of fossil fuels used to power the building, they will need to install some solar panels to mitigate their emissions and reduce energy costs for occupants. Energy efficiency requirements are tightened for the largest single-family homes, those over 4,000 square feet, and for new large multifamily buildings. And this is important to control the growth of electricity demand and keep our grid stable and reliable. Next slide, please. The additional requirements do not affect additions and renovations of existing homes, and this vote will not impact any project that you have planned for your own home. Pre-wiring means having adequate electric service, designated circuits, and appropriate outlets to use electricity for heating, hot water, cooking, clothes drying, and electric vehicle charging. And for most single-family homes, today's standard 200 amp service is adequate to serve those loads. It is much, much less expensive to put these electric components in place during initial construction than to retrofit the house later. And that's why this code focuses on new construction, because this is a much bigger problem for existing homes, and that's why it's not being forced now, because it's not economically viable for many, many homes today. But we can stop adding to the problem with new construction. And a quick aside for those who may not be familiar with modern electric heating systems, high-efficiency heat pumps are widely available today, can keep even the largest homes warm through a New England winter, and they have lower operating costs than oil and electric resistance heat, and they're also frequently cost competitive with natural gas when you factor in that they replace both furnaces and air conditioning systems, and they come with generous state and federal incentive payments. Next slide, please. Now, if you need another reason why building owners might want to electrify during the lifetime of their buildings, besides the need to address climate change, consider these projections of natural gas prices that were developed by our gas utilities themselves. Massachusetts has committed to limiting the growth of fossil fuel infrastructure, and as communities around us transition to clean electricity, the cost of maintaining natural gas infrastructure will be shared among a shrinking base of customers. So even under pessimistic assumptions for the pace of electrification, natural gas prices will increase significantly by 2050, while an enormous amount of energy and attention is being put into keeping electricity costs affordable and making clean energy abundant. Next slide, please. Finally, adopting the specialized code will move Milton towards qualifying to a state grant program for energy projects called the Climate Leaders Community Certification. This is the next generation of the Green Communities program, which Milton qualified for in 2010, and has enabled us to receive over $1 million in state grants for energy projects. Introduced by the 2021 climate law, the Climate Leader Community Certification will be the state's largest grant program to fund the energy transition, and it would be wise for Milton to get in early. Next slide, please. All right. So to reiterate the key points, the specialized code update will apply only to new buildings constructed after January 2025. They are necessary to reduce climate change impacts, but they preserve flexibility for present and future energy needs. If fossil fuels are the most economical energy choice today, you're free to choose it, but you'll be protected from costly construction projects to change energy sources if and when electricity becomes more cost-effective in the future.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Finally, adopting the code will help Milton qualify for state grants to support energy projects. So, while few of us here are building code experts, I hope I've made it clear how much effort has gone into making this a simple and easy step for town meeting members to approve. As it's already been by, when I wrote this morning, 36 communities, but actually it's up to 40 because there's a lot of town meetings going on right now. It doesn't affect residents and owners of existing buildings while providing cost-competitive and flexible paths for new construction to align with where we know our climate and energy system are headed. Responding to climate change with appropriate urgency does have some risks and challenges, but the risks of inaction are far more serious. Let's do this for our kids and our grandkids. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, in the vest. I think you were first, right?
Okay, there's something I'm supposed to press here, but it's okay. I'm going to be short. I'm Laurie McIntosh. Precinct 10. I used to be in 5 for like 20 years, and so I have to stop and think about it every time. I got redistricted last year. Anyway, I'm the founder of Sustainable Milton. I want to thank Alex for that excellent presentation. And I just want to add, this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. We don't have a choice. In addition, it gets us money. So what's there not to love? Thank you.
Ms. DeGaius, I think you were next. Is that right?
Good evening, Cheryl Tagayas, Precinct 9. I'd like to also to thank Sustainable Milton for bringing this article forward, and to Dr. Asha for his presentation, but also for all of his work in preparation for tonight. He made available to us public forums, answered a lot of questions, put a lot of information on the website, sent out emails, and I really thank him for that, and I hope you will too. So I've been an architect for over 30 years. I think many of you have heard me say that before. But codes, that's what we do. That's what architects do. We have to work to meet the codes. These codes continuously change. They're on these 3-year cycles. And we know in advance that they're coming. We know that what the goals are in these codes, and we're provided opportunity to comment on them and to be trained on how to follow the codes. So with respect to climate change, resiliency, energy efficiency, and greenhouse gas emissions, our industry has been moving towards the requirements found in this specialized stretch code for some time. What does it do? Simply put, it requires us to design and build better buildings. It emphasizes reducing energy demand. A highly insulated, airtight building with ventilation for healthy indoor air quality needs less heating and cooling, is less costly to operate, and is more comfortable to be in. You can think of wrapping yourself in a coat that keeps you warm, keeps the cool, damp air out. That's what the code requires. So once you do this, the code focuses on making buildings all electric, but you're already efficient because you've done this wrap. So it allows us to eliminate on-site fossil fuel consumption, but it doesn't mandate it. It's intentional to make it harder not to do all electric because it's incentivizing us to do all electric. We converted our home, my husband and I, to all electric over 20 years ago. The technology has changed since then, and we've benefited from that. I cook on induction, we charge our electric vehicle, and we've had heat pumps and electric hot water heater for all of these years. The technology is so much better than it was when we started. It's so efficient to use heat pump technology for heating, cooling, and hot water. And the induction cooktop is far more efficient than gas without the toxic particles. And it offers precision in the cooking. So once we lower our electric demand, we can add solar panels, and that can increasingly provide the electricity that we need. So while initial construction costs may be slightly higher, incentives such as rebates and tax credits are available to offset that cost. Additionally, utility costs are lower, and with the savings, payback is very short. Making these changes to how we build is one of the most effective tools we have for mitigating and adapting to climate change. The responsibility is ours. Please join me in voting yes.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Stoddard. I'm town meeting member, Precinct 3. And I'm speaking as kind of a regular person tonight. I'm not an architect, and I actually would never have any idea how to even think about a code or a stretch code or a specialized code if it weren't for being part of this body. So I appreciate the opportunity to get more educated. So I'm speaking tonight to encourage a yes vote for Article 37, adopting the specialized energy code regulating the design of new construction in Milton is the right thing to do to accelerate the transition to clean energy and to avoid the expense of converting these buildings to electricity in the future. As development continues in Milton, this code means that people will get houses that are pre-wired for electric and have on-site solar, and this benefits all of us. I, like many of you, live in a natural gas-fueled 1950s house, and I wish I had the infrastructure where I could just switch to electric whenever I choose. Instead, I have to plan out probably a 10-year retrofit using various different incentives. I will do that, but it's going to be painful. We're trying to do what we can by adding insulation and getting new windows put in, but that doesn't even scratch the surface on reducing home emissions, which are about half of the emissions in Milton. So I can do more tonight for our community by voting yes for this specialized energy code. Regarding the actual cost of electric, as Alex pointed to, a 2023 Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources study found that all electric homes under the stretch code would cost less overall to finance and operate than a fossil fuel home under the base code. So this is a specialized, which is even a level higher. Prices fluctuate, but the assumption that it's too expensive is a flawed one. Federal and state tax credits make all electric geothermal the cheapest buildings to build right now. I also love the specialized code adoption because it will move Milton towards being a climate leader, or to becoming towards a climate leader community certification. And this opens us up for a lot of sources of state funding for energy projects. So we're really lucky to have an incredible climate action planning committee to do a lot of the heavy lifting, to educate us, and to have us think forward and to plan for our future. So please join me tonight in voting yes for Article 37.
Thank you. Ms. Swenson, I think you're next.
Thank you, Moderator Hiss, and thank you, Sustainable Milton, for all of your hard work, volunteer hours, and our staff, and thank you, Warrant Committee, for all of your time that you spent and all the work you put into it. Denny Swenson, Precinct 5, town meeting member, and I just want to thank everyone involved with proactively trying to address our greenhouse gas emissions and starting the important discussion. I have I know of two wooded lots near me that have been sold to builders, and I was wondering, these lots are on contiguous land with conservation. Some of these trees are, 100 or so years old, and I was wondering, would these builders need to clear cut? Would they need to do this to create solar? I have a couple more questions. I don't know if Sustainable Milton is able to talk to us, but I'm I'm just wondering if they would be at a disadvantage if they did not want to clear cut these trees, or if they could not clear cut these trees because of conservation restrictions. We just have so many things to balance. So, generally speaking, what are the implications of this article to trees?
I don't quite understand the clear cut comment. Could you just elaborate a
to
little
get
bit?
solar, because it's incentivizing
Oh, I see.
solar
If they
over
put a-
electric, or you have to do some combination. I just wasn't clear on that, so I wanted to understand that.
If they put solar panels and there's older trees in the way, does they have to cut the trees? Is that, I see, okay, I understand, thank you.
And I have two more questions.
Yes,
for
please,
sustainable.
yes.
What are the implications to creating new affordable houses and affordable units? Would this code apply to our new 40Bs? And would this code apply to our eventual MBTA zoning? And then I had a fourth question, if that's okay. And this would be to the warrant committee. Do we have a sense of grid capacity now? Do we have a sense of how close we are now, or any plans in the way to enhance capacity to our grid? I noticed that was in there.
Okay, we have some questions before we have any speakers. So, Mr. Hashik?
I haven't spoken yet, but I can try to answer.
You have those answers? Oh, okay, sir, if you could identify yourself.
Yes, hi, my name is Jonathan Lashley, Precinct 4, town meeting member. I hope you're not tired of hearing from architects. So I'm going to try to answer your questions. First about the PV, the solar. That's a little outside the scope of the discussion a little bit, but I'm happy to try to explain that the solar implications would be dependent on the specific project at hand. And frankly, the solar panels would be in all likelihood mounted on the roof of the building and wouldn't need to be clearing forest to install the solar panels. But I don't know the project at hand. And if the project is under a certain square footage, it's not going to be required to have solar panels anyway. That would be at the discretion of the developer. The second question was about affordable. Affordable and 40Bs would be held to the same standards as all other projects with this opt-in specialized energy code as any other project. So neither 40Bs nor affordable projects would be exempted, nor would they be held to higher standards.
And sir, just so you're an architect, but your expertise in this area is based on, if you could just explain.
My expertise is based on being an architect. I'm a registered architect in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I also specialize in large-scale multifamily affordable housing.
Very good, that's what I'm looking for, thank you.
All right.
And MBTA? Perhaps that may be
I have no comments right now
None
about
on
the
that one,
MBTA.
okay. So, and I'll hold off on the grid for someone else. All right, thank you.
So I do want to make a few more points quickly. I'm hugely in favor of the adoption of this opt-in specialized code. I was very excited to learn that this was going to be up on our warrant. I want to make a point, a major point, I think. For every voting member here tonight who owns a home, who rents a home, who lives in a home in Milton, who I think that covers everybody who gets to vote, this new energy code will not prompt a change to your current home. Full stop. There's no mandate, if you don't want to do anything, to alter anything about your house. So the code does not require anyone to go all electric or eliminate your gas stoves or to put PVs on your roof. What is at stake? Larger new construction and major renovation projects. Now, we all know whether or not we necessarily like it, or where you might stand on this, but there is new construction coming to Milton. There are 40Bs coming. There are 40Bs in construction. I, for one, would take a lot of peace of mind knowing that if and when these projects break ground, they will be held to the most rigorously stringent sustainability standards available to the Commonwealth if we were to adopt this code. So I will wrap up. I was originally going to say we should be like the city of Boston, the whole city, which is already opted in, Worcester, Cambridge, Needham, Norwood, Belmont, and just this week, Sharon and Natick and many other towns are putting it to vote in their town meetings this week, and so far all of them have approved it. So if we don't, it's going to be very retrograde. But we don't have to be like them. We can be like us. We can be like Milton. We can come together tonight and we can show our neighbors, Quincy, Braintree, Weymouth, Canton, how to do it. We have a chance now tonight to be stewards for this town, our children, our grandchildren, and for the future of the planet. So please vote to opt in. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Hello, everybody. Mark Croninger, Precinct 7. Great presentation tonight. I will baseline my comments with the fact that I totally and completely agree in man-made climate change. It's a huge concern. I have 2 boys in their late 20s who are very concerned about it all the time. I'm also a skier, and I've seen the ski industry up north ravaged, and now it is basically March for any reliable skiing, knock on wood. That said, how many people in this room have electric vehicles? Wow, okay, I don't see that well, but I'd guess that's about 15 to maybe 25%. It's 15 to 20%. Why don't the rest of you have electric vehicles? You're waiting to see if the infrastructure catches up. You're waiting to see how many charging stations. Let me finish, please. I won't boo you.
Well, sir, if you're going to ask questions,
I can ask.
Just speak.
That's true. Well, on
Don't
the
ask
comment about
questions.
why you don't have them, okay, fair enough. That said, the reason that a lot of people don't have them is because we're still in this adoption window where we're trying to figure out, will there be enough charging stations? What will it cost me? I am totally on board with doing what we can for the climate change here, and I think radical measures need to be adopted soon. In the same token, I think the Warrant Committee's recommendation was we give this thing a little more time. This is an opt-in, okay? So if we give this a little more time to see, actually, how this plays out in the Needhams or communities that are similar to Milton, how it affects things. My other a question I also have is, will this, I know there's big talk coming in the fall about whether or not we're going to be launching into a new school. Would this apply to the new school? If it does, what type of funding additions would that cost, and would that prohibit us from having a new school because the tax levies override would be so much more intrusive than maybe they already are? So these are questions that merit asking. It's an opt-in. I saw a number up there of $1 million in 10 years, I think is what I saw we've received, right? Then I saw a $67 million school budget. $1 million over 10 years is spit in the ocean. So if we're going to make these kind of decisions, I think it would be prudent to have a proving ground of some of these other communities, which are about maybe 10 to 12%, it sounds like, that have adopted this, and then take a look at this. They're not going to say we can't adopt it when we want to, and it seems from some of the slides I've seen, we like to do studies. So let's do a study on how these other communities are grappling with this, and then come back to it. But if we chain ourselves to this now, and we have, a new school, and this applies to that, or some other things, then we've chained ourselves to something that may prohibit us from doing some things. Last comment I'll make is, why couldn't we explore imparting this in a version of our own code that doesn't have the state running it, that doesn't have arbitrary updates, et cetera, that we could implement, that actually might be something that we could control? Because it seems to me that the state has a lot of stuff they want to implement potentially out of our control. So thank you for your time. I appreciate that feedback on my thing. I did ask for it, so I got it. But all I'm saying is, why don't we give it a little more time to wait and see how some of these communities are dealing with it, what the actual cost is, and how it impacts things like schools. I don't know if there's an answer on that. Inviting commercial businesses into the community, et cetera. So thank you for your time, folks.
Thank you. Ms. Swenson, just before we ask, there were 2 questions you asked, Ms. Swenson, that I don't think I got answers to on, does it affect MBTA and grid capacity? Select Board, would this new code affect any housing offered under the MBTA?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
may I address the code? Because MBTA communities is zoning. This is a building code, and they're separate. Building codes are state law, and zoning is local law. There's no exemption under state law under the building codes. I've checked with DOER on this, and that's the confirmation I've received.
That helps with that? That help with that question?
Cheryl, if you don't mind. I'm Cheryl, if you don't mind. Sorry to call your name, but I know you would know this. So 40B won't necessarily fall under this code, the 40Bs that are coming?
They do fall under it because it's a building code.
Okay, so they would, so that's a benefit. Okay, but MBTA would not necessarily?
Well, any new construction that might follow from new zoning would fall under it, yes. So any new commercial building, any new mixed-use building, any new residential building would follow under it, whether it came under our existing zoning or any new zoning.
So would MBTA fall
Denny,
under it?
please, but you're not, no back and forth, please. I think she answered the question that any new building, any new housing is going to be
MBTA would be a new building.
yes, that's right. Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks. Yes, any new building is going to, this will affect. And then you had a question to the warrant committee about grid capacity? Because that was a warrant committee concern? Thank you, Mr. Humphries.
Dave Humphries, Chair of the Warrant Committee. In our deliberation with regards to this, on our Warrant Committee, we have an electrician. An electrician, in the course of his trade, deals with electricity and with the grid. And it came to our attention in our deliberations that the ability of the grid to sustain a project, especially if it's a large one, is always a concern. The ability of the grid to be able to sustain a project is always a concern. An electric building is going to require more electricity if it's heating, right, than a building that had another type of fuel would cause more of a concern. So that is in our comment, is that there is going to be a concern is that if we're building lots of electric buildings, whether the grid is going to be able to sustain it. It came up at our meeting that there had been projects that this person had been involved in that were delayed for some time or became very, very difficult because of the load that they were going to put on the grid. So we put it in our comment, the ability of the grid to be able to support this is a concern that we have. Thank you.
So I want to ask a question before we have any more speakers. So speakers, if you could turn, or potential speakers, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. If you could turn around and look at the audience. So audience, whose mind is completely made up on this article one way or another? So speakers, look around. You have a right to speak, but I think the body has decided already. So I might ask the speakers, would you be willing to not speak and we go to a vote? Because I think the audience has decided one way or another. No, Mr. Fahey, I would prefer, if everyone is going to walk away, it's a group decision. Would you all be willing to do this? Please? Okay, then Mr. Fahey, I'm not going to recognize, because if I let it in for you, I let the floodgates open. So, with that, I'm going to now close down the speaking. We'll go to a vote. Thank you. So we are on Article 37, which is a bylaw change. It only requires a majority vote. We'll put up the poll. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. Yes, please, can we pause the vote? Yes, ma'am? Sorry, good point. You're right. Thank you. This is one of those points. One of our rules says, I believe it's Rule 5, when the warrant committee recommends no, what you are now doing is voting on the article itself. So, if you are in favor of the article as written, you vote yes. If you are opposed to the article, you vote no. It's that simple. Thank you, ma'am, for reminding me of this. Is that clear, everyone? You like the article? Yes. You dislike the article? No. Very good. With that, we'll open up the poll again. Yep. The article passes by a vote of 160 to 51, 6 abstains. Thank you, speakers, for your indulgence. So, folks, it is 10:20. I don't think we're going to get through everything tonight unless you want to stay till 11 or 11:30. Do you want to stay till 11 or 11:30? Okay. Then we will move on. So, Article 38. Pardon me? Are you asking for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, vote on this. Okay, the simple way to do it is if there's a motion to adjourn and the body says no, we'll carry on. So, is there a motion to adjourn? Yes. Yes. Is there a second? Second. I'll do an audio, the old way. All in favor of motion to adjourn, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. I declare a no on the motion to adjourn. We will carry on. We're now on to Article 38. I'd like to, Vice Chair Musto, anything you wish to add, or should I turn this over to Mr. Doyle? No. Mr. Doyle, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Arthur Doyle, Precinct 7 member, Conservation Commission member. This article very much relates to the Neponset River Estuary Study, a project that you approved in Article 14 earlier this evening that the Conservation Commission had submitted to the CPC. If we were to look at the course description for Milton Academy's advanced environmental course, we would see a comment to the effect that the only remaining salt marsh in Boston Harbor exists in the Neponset River estuary. This article addresses 33 of the acres of that salt marsh. Many more are in Milton. If you take a look at this map very quickly, which you previously saw when Mr. Callahan spoke, on the right-hand side, you have President's Golf Course. On the left-hand side of Granite Avenue, you see a salt marsh. All of that salt marsh, very extensive, is owned by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. This article pertains to the land, the marshes north of Cortlandt Circle, Riverside Avenue, and Karen, if you could go to the next one, this will give us a little more of a clear picture. The Mass Conservation Commission Act was passed in 1957. In years shortly thereafter, the town of Milton adopted it, and within a couple of years, actually the 1963 annual town meeting, it passed one of its first actions relative to conservation. And at that time, by unanimous vote, it transferred to the care, custody, management, and control of the Conservation Commission for the promotion and development of the natural resources of the town, 7.85 acres, and they are identified in green as parcel G5611. 2 years later, at the annual town meeting, Article 68, by unanimous vote, took by eminent domain for the promotion and development of natural resources and for the preservation of open space, 25 acres of land. Those are immediately to the right of the green parcel. They are G5610, G569, G568, and G567. Unlike the previous taking, for some reason unknown to us, they did not entrust this to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission, so it is under the jurisdiction of the Select Board. And at the same town meeting, they also put into conservation the purple line that you see which is a 1.88 acre parcel identified as G57-3. In 1975, of course, we have the passage of the Wetlands Protection Act, and in the last month, readings were completed on amending those Wetland Protection Act guidelines in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. So we would like, in view of all of this activity that will be forthcoming, to suggest that these parcels be converted as indicated in the article to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission so that we would have complete conformity and unity across this entire salt marsh in the town of Milton. Thank you very much, and we thank the Warrant Committee and the Select Board for their endorsement of this article.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone wish to speak to this article? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. It requires a 2/3 vote as this is a transfer of land. So 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The article passes by a 2/3 vote, 193 yes, 2 noes, 0 abstains. Now, 39 we did last night. Article 40, we have an update for you. The Warrant Committee has decided to change their recommendation for you tonight for 3 reasons. One, the Warrant Committee had some language suggestions for the Historic District Committee. The Select Board had some different language changes, and Mr. Gaius, the Master Plan Implementation Committee, tells me they had some different language changes. So we couldn't resolve all of those before town meeting tonight, and yet all 3 bodies informed me they are supportive of the Historic District. And rather than try to massage all that language tonight in front of you, they are all in support of referring this back. So, Mr. Chair of the Warrant Committee, could you stand up and make your motion to refer this back, please?
Dave Humphreys, Chair of the Warrant Committee. May it please the town meeting that we make a motion to refer this back to the Select Board for further study with regards to the local historic district.
Vice Chair Musto, would you confirm Select Board's support?
Thank you, Acting Chair for tonight and of the Select Board, and we agree with the recommendation of the Warrant Committee. Thank you.
And Mr. Gaius, can you represent the Master Plan Implementation? Can you confirm your support?
Yes, the committee voted to support a referral back for further study.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Laufer's, Larry Laufer's committee has worked for 3 years on this, and they would like to show you their homework. He promised 7 to 8 minutes. It's mostly slides and some commentary. So if you would just perhaps let us acknowledge the work he's done. He'll talk you through a little bit about this, and then Mr. Laufer promises it will be 8 minutes, right? Thank you. And if you could introduce yourself and your address, please.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Larry Laufer. I am Precinct 2, proud member. I'm the chair of the local historic study committee. Milton was settled in 1640. Milton was incorporated in 1662. That is 362 years of history. Milton has grown throughout all those years, and we are intent on continuing that innovation and growth with this designation. I am not here to discuss 362 years. I'm the last guy up tonight. But to talk about the next 362 years. Every good story begins with the end in mind. And this one is no different. At the time of the European exploration and settlement of Milton in the early 1600s, the area was inhabited by the Neponset tribe of the Massachusetts and Algonquin people, who referred to the area, that is Milton, as Unquatuquisset, meaning lower falls, denoting the place where the rapids of the Neponset Valley, or the Neponset River, and the Massachusetts Bay come together. We now call this area Milton Village. Milton Village has been the epicenter of importance not only here in this town, but throughout the country. The Neponset swift-moving water powered our first industrial revolution, and it revolutionized industry by using water power. The Suffolk Resolves House is no longer in Milton Village, but that's where our founding fathers met to work on the language that is integral to our Constitution. Listening here the last couple of nights, that need to get the language right is still strong. I'm going to skip some of this. Everybody knows Milton has been named one of the top towns in the country for years. It was 7 years ago that the Milton Historical Commission went to the select board, the then Milton Historical Commission, to ask for this committee to be started. It started 3 years ago. And when we started, we wanted to really understand what is historical, why is it historical, why are we going to preserve it, and how can we continue to grow and innovate through this process over the next 100 to 362 years. Historic areas are named and controlled by 3 entities: federal, state, and local. There are over 351 towns in Milton, in Massachusetts. There's only 111 historical districts. The reason for that is this is very difficult to get done. There is state language, there is local language, and there is multitudes of people who want to put their finger in this pie. We recommended that we refer this back, and because our committee was set up, we have dedicated people who have been working on this for 3 years, but now the town has gotten involved through our meetings with the commission, with the committees, and each one of them had something they wanted to say. When I spoke to Jen Doherty, and Jen is, let me get her title. She's important, but she is our coordinator, and she has been helpful throughout our process. When I told her that tonight we were going to present and we were going to refer back to change language, she burst out laughing. She said, that is typical of this particular kind of thing. Throughout the time that we have been studying, and the Select Board and the Historical Commission has been trying to get this done, everybody has been in support of this. Milton Village was the epicenter of so much important stuff. It is not yet protected by federal, state, or local, and that's why we chose it. We followed the Milton Planning Commission and the overlay, and pictures are nice, aren't they? This is Milton Village behind us. We care about being innovative and growing. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to allow to do. So during this process, we talk to all of the stakeholders, not only in town, the committees, but out of town. We talked to a number of the different towns that were doing this, found out what they were doing. Everyone has slightly different approach to this. We sent out letters to each property owner. We sent out surveys to get more information. We were required to have one public meeting. We had two. There are developers here in this town that have projects in front of our zoning board and the various boards that they're supposed to.
You have about 3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes. Right?
I'll be done faster than that. That's my 8 minutes, right? Yep. I lost my place. But in any event, we have spoken to everyone. Everyone has had a chance to wade in on this, and referring it back at this moment gives us a chance to narrow what we're trying to do and to get it done quickly. Thank you for your time. I want to thank my committee members. Ryan is here. He's our secretary. Ryan McLean. Bill Mullen is part of the Historical Commission. He is on it. Doug Sybeck. And Bill Mullen is our representative from the Historical Commission. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Go home. Drive safely.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Does anyone wish to speak to this motion to refer? You having some fun with me over there, Mr. Chinman? I like that. I like that. All right, this just requires a simple majority vote. If we could put up the poll. We are, and by the way, pardon me? Yes refers back. No, we will resume debate. All in favor of yes referring back, please signify by pressing 1. 2 to resume debate. 3 for abstain. The motion carries, 198 to 4. Thank you. Article 41 was passed by the consent agenda. That takes us to Article 42 and 43, which are 2 citizens' petitions. The citizen petition is to see the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, and management of control of the Conservation Commission, certain 41.4 acres of land to the town of Milton, 3-4A Lot 4, et cetera. I think I'll start with our Warrant Committee Chair, Mr. Humphreys, to explain your no vote on the citizen petition.
Dave Humphreys, Chairman of the Warrant Committee. Article 43. Our comment. There's some history here. I'm sorry, we're on 42?
42. This is the...
Oh, I'm sorry. It's late. With regard to 42, recommend no. There's some history here. At the annual town meeting on May 1, 2023, with regard to warrant article 31 at that time, this was the land swap, is that at that time is that the town meeting had voted to conduct a land swap of certain properties in order to build a school. Insofar as the subject matter of this article refers to the same matter that was previously voted upon by the town meeting, it was the opinion of the Warrant Committee that this matter has been previously addressed by town meeting and is moot, and that we would therefore recommend a vote of no. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to this article? Ms. Agostino, you're recognized.
Mr. Moderator, Diane DiTullio, Agostino, Precinct.
A little closer to the mic.
Losing my voice.
Maybe we could help you with...
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Precinct 9. To help expedite, I believe there's a presentation by another town meeting member that you're familiar with, so
Yes.
if that was done first, then I could speak, hopefully.
Yes, Mr. Kelleher, I believe if he is here, submitted a presentation. He said he would consider whether he would go forward with that tonight. Is Mr. Kelleher here? And if you would like to present, please. Yep. Decided not to. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Agostino.
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Precinct 9. The Warrant Committee Chair and the Warrant Committee is correct that this article, exactly like the article that we just passed by 179 votes or something on page 54, is the exact same situation. They're both the exact same thing. If it wasn't for a land swap and if it wasn't for a school, there would be no question on how we would be proceeding here. In 1963, just like what we just voted, and in 1964, and the documents, the legal documents that are documented in the annual report were provided to the Warrant Committee and presented by myself. And in those documents, they were to agree to purchase and then get federal funds to use to save and protect Pope's Pond land for conservation and wetland control purposes. Just like page 54, the votes were unanimous. Milton officials also similarly forgot to place the attached article on a town meeting since 1964. One of the additional proponents of this article directly spoke to the EEA and confirmed and was told that Milton is required to complete the process by approving the transfer of Pope's Pond's entire 41.4 acres from the town ownership to the Conservation Commission's care, custody, and control. That's the law. That's the research that's been done. So for the Warrant Committee to adhere to the law for one parcel of property, for the Conservation Commission to adhere to the law for one portion, both done in 1963, is more of a political decision than a factual land, come on, what's the word? Help me out here. Deeded land, finalization of the property. So no matter how we vote here, it is a legal issue, and it's really a shame because we all support building the new school. The issue relies on the details, the legal details, and some of these have been raised at the State House with the proposed land swap. So I would encourage you to vote yes so that we stop tying things up and delaying the most important thing, which is the new school for our children and our grandchildren. We all have a stake in getting the school done, and the delays are just going to continue if we don't do exactly what we did on Article, or page 54, Article 38. I sat at the Warrant Committee meeting, and I listened to the Conservation Commission absolutely not deliver what we know to be the law. And you might hear it again tonight. So, Mr. Moderator, since this is way past my ability to talk tonight, I would appreciate if you could recognize, just for one sentence, to say that she directly was told by the individual at the EOEEA that the town was required to finalize the transfer of all 41.4. It'd be wonderful to have a park there. I'd love a park, but the law is the law. And I appreciate it. It's Maggie Oldfield, I believe she was the second. Oh, sorry.
Ms. Oldfield. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Oldfield, you wish to be recognized.
So I'm Maggie Oldfield, Precinct 5. So I prepared a couple statements. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the saying, clean up in aisle 4. And to me, the citizens' petition is the cleanup effort. I believe that this town meeting needs to finish what 1963 town meeting started. And I got up a year ago and asked for a friendly amendment to take the Pope's Pond out of the land swap. And unfortunately, it was not adopted. And Diane reached out to me last year and said, oh, I know you have a personal interest in this, so why don't you sign in the citizens petition? So I did. I fully support conservation land. I fully support the process. And back in October, I attended the warrant committee meeting, and at that time, a member of the warrant committee asked the question, what would the effect be of the land swap if Pope's Pond land came out? And the chair of the Concom said, quote, that the land at Pope's Pond is already identified as Article 97, and we all know that existing Article 97 cannot be used to replace other existing Article 97 land, so that the EEA will have to look elsewhere to make up for the numerical calculation, end quote. So I think this should put everybody's mind at ease who supported the land swap, that taking the Pope's Pond land will not affect the land swap. The transfer of the land tonight to the Conservation Commission is just like Article 38 that we just passed. And we just passed the stretch code. So I feel like everybody who just voted for Article 38 and just voted for our children and our grandchildren, that we need to preserve all of our open space. And to me, this is a no-brainer. It's a cleanup. We have to finish what was started. And I please ask that you support this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. See two speakers here. Yes, ma'am.
Kathleen O'Donnell, Precinct 7, former town council for lots of other cities and towns, and former member of the Planning Board, member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I rise to say that in my experience of being town council in other towns and my presence at town meeting here has confirmed the fact that we have already voted to transfer this property to the Conservation Commission. And in that vote that we took, we reserved a section of that land for active recreation for Peverly Park. Earlier today and last year, we voted money to support the construction of a park for kids on Pope's Pond property. The article that's being presented here, A, does not need to be done because we already did it, and B, it doesn't protect the Peverly Park. It turns it all over to conservation, and the statute provides that conservation commissions do not handle active recreation. So the money that we have supported through the Community Preservation Committee and the hard work of the Peverly Park people would go down the drain because this conservation land can't be used for a park. And we've, as I said, just decided to spend $75,000 to support that construction. But I would just like to point out that this transfer has already been done. It does not need a cleanup. And even if it was needed a cleanup, it's incorrect in fact, it takes out that park that we are trying to build at Pope's Pond. And so I please ask that you would vote no on this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. O'Rourke.
Let's see if I can get this. Thank you. Sean O'Rourke, town meeting member, Precinct 8, chair of the school building committee. It's late. You know, we did this last year for 2 nights, and now we're bringing it back again. It's disheartening.
Little closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. It's disheartening because for me, it just seems like somebody trying to defeat the school. You know what I mean? To take the work that's already been done and basically extinguish it. we worked hard to study fine land. We found this error that was there for Pope's Pond. This all came out when we walked with EEA. They are the ones that told us to include it in the legislation that we have up there. This legislation is up at the state. It's gone through a committee. It's come out of that committee favorably. It's due for a third reading in the Senate. It's on the process to doing. If you vote yes tonight, who knows what might happen? It might throw a monkey wrench into things. Now we delay the school further. That 2027 opening deadline that I told you is going to get pushed out. So to keep it short, please vote no.
Thank you. Done. Mr. Kiernan?
Thank you. John Kiernan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. And this is going to be very brief because I agree wholeheartedly, 100% with the last two speakers. This is unnecessary. The land has already been transferred to the Conservation Commission. It appears to be an attempt to unwind something that's already happened. So the issue is moot. It's already been transferred, but there's another issue, and Mr. O'Rourke just indicated that. There's another problem because this is not exactly the same article as last year that we spent 2 days discussing and then voting on. The problem with this article is they forgot the carve-out for Beverly Park. And if the carve-out is not there, the carve-out sent the up to 4 acres to the park department. That's not even in this. So you'd be unraveling the new Beverly Park playground. So for all the reasons that have been articulately and eloquently stated by the last two speakers, I also urge a no vote on this. Thank you.
So does any speaker have anything new to offer? Nope. Sat down. Anything new, Ms. Agostino? Can you keep it to a minute, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The documents that have been provided confirm what legally has to be done to finalize the process. And I personally, with grandchildren in the schools, do not appreciate being told that it's an attempt to unwind the land swap. It's not. It's an attempt to get everything properly and legally documented. It is I didn't even think of this article until I read Article 38, and I said, wow, in the same year, wow, my voice is coming back too. Thank you for the gumdrop, or it was you. So yeah, legally, this is gonna be tied up, and it's a real shame because it's not to undo the land swap. It is just to move forward and do things right, and 100%, 41.4%, 41.4 acres was voted in 1963. That's all documented. Anyone can pull it up in the annual report, so thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, with that, we will go to a vote. Now, it requires a 2/3 vote, so what we're doing is, again, if you are in favor of this citizen's petition, you vote yes. And it would require a 2/3 vote to pass because it's a transfer of land. If you are opposed to this citizen's petition, you vote no. Clear? And we'll put up the poll. Thank you. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The article fails to catch a 2/3 vote by 16 yeses and 178 noes. we now come to the grand finale, to Article 43, to see if the town will vote to request that Milton State Delegation withdraw Senate 2301, quote, an act establishing speed limits on portions of State Highway Route 28 and Chickatawbut Road in the town of Milton, unquote, because it is a, quote, speed trap, unquote, and instead return to the original Mass DOT rotary plan. We object to the speed trap in particular because it would exacerbate the Milton Police's disproportionate ticketing of motorists of color above the already established 30% plus or minus racial differential as detailed in the 2022 Massachusetts Uniform Citation Data Analysis Report. I'd like to go to the Warrant Committee Chair. Mr. Humphries, would you explain the committee's recommendation for a no vote?
Dave Humphries, Chairman of Warrant Committee. There's some history here. This bill that we're talking about, S2301, was first filed as S2488 following special town meeting in 2019, where the state delegation was directed to file this on our behalf to put a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit at Chickatawbut in 28. In its current iteration, that bill is pending, so it has not been enacted upon. Will it be enacted upon? Will it ever be passed? Who knows? The question here is, do we, you, town meeting, direct the delegation to withdraw that? The citizen's petition asks you to do that, objecting to the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. The concern is that it would constitute a speed trap that would, based upon the data as presented by the proponent of the article, which establishes a 30% racial differential, raises the allegation of over-ticketing or racial profiling by the Milton Police, is that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit would constitute a speed trap that would lead to over-ticketing of motorists at that intersection. And so the Warrant Committee received the presentation. We deliberated upon this. Our recommendation is that the town vote no. Essentially, is that we did not make the link between a speed limit in that particular location. If there's an issue with regards to racial profiling, if there's an issue with regards to over-ticketing in town, there's an issue in ticketing in town. The question was that particular 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in light of how dangerous that intersection is. Essentially, the Warrant Committee has concerns about the safety of motorists in that intersection. The Warrant Committee felt that a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit was appropriate in that intersection, in that concerns of racial profiling and over-ticketing in the town at large, which is what the data was about. The town at large did not outweigh the safety concerns with regards to the implementation of a speed limit there. And that was the basis for the Warrant Committee's recommendation of a no.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to this citizen's petition? Sir, do you wish to be recognized? Pardon me? Have you told me of your name before tonight? Your signature on the signatory? In that case, sir, if you haven't informed me in advance that you wish to speak tonight, and you're not a registered voter, our rules prevent you from speaking to the body. Can you? I'm sorry, our rules say you notify the moderator if you wish to speak before the body. We check voter registration, and then I allow all registered voters to speak. So I'm sorry, sir. I think, sir, you were first.
I would like to make a motion. I don't know if that's the process, but I'd like to make a motion to allow Mr. Jesse to speak.
Okay. Is there a second? I'll do this quickly. All in favor of allowing this gentleman to speak, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The motion fails. Mr. Walker, you're recognized.
Leroy Walker, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 10. You can't hear me?
Now.
That's unusual. Leroy Walker, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 10. I have a pretty straightforward question, which is we ought to hear from the chief if he's here. If not, whoever can answer the question as to whether the cited information about whether there was a differential in terms of ticketing was in fact the case. This isn't, for me, this isn't a question of the intersection or whether the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit makes sense, which I think I supported when we first talked about that. If there is a difference in terms of how people are being ticketed and that difference is significant, I'd like to hear about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief King, you're recognized.
Hi, everybody. Just a couple notes, and I think this will answer your question, Leroy, but if not, just follow up with me, obviously. Just two important issues about this article. I want to speak to it regardless of the question. You know, it is really about two issues. One's traffic safety on Randolph Ave. The other one's about ticketing of minority motorists. Both are issues that obviously should be a concern to everyone here. Obviously, both issues are a concern for me. You know, the language of this article implies a bill filed by Senator Timilty will create a speed trap whereby the Milton Police will disproportionately ticket residents of Dorchester and Randolph, which are majority minority communities. You know, a little bit of history, not repeating what the chair of the Warrant Committee said, but you know, although here as a citizen's petition signed by the required number of Milton residents, the actual proponent of this article, as he just identified himself, is a Randolph Town Councilor. You know, what he left out when he spoke with the Warrant Committee, and I feel was unfair, is that his wife is a political opponent of Senator Timilty. I'm not here on Senator Timilty's behalf. I'm here on behalf of the Milton Police Department, but I do think that is relevant. The original article requesting a lower speed limit in this area occurred because Milton community members reached out with and through the town officials to their legislative members and to MassDOT seeking safety improvements. Not because of anything the Milton Police Department did. The Milton Police Department never requested or spoke at that town meeting to lower the speed limit. The Milton Police Department never reached out to Senator Timilty requesting he file any bill. And aside from having nothing to do with the speed limit reduction proposal, I personally have consistently said traffic engineering and road design are critical to long-term solutions of fixing Randolph Ave. I think funding for an entire corridor improvement on Randolph Ave is more important than lowering the speed limit on one section. So I wouldn't have personally advocated for that. I also consistently say all those solutions through engineering and road design are far more effective than police writing tickets. You know, the data he references, and Leroy, like I said, I'll follow up if you have any specific question. The proponent references statewide data that comes from the hands-free data collection law. Anyone in this room can go home and Google, it's the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security website, and see it for themselves, not just for Milton, but statewide. This data is evaluated by the state, is tracked by the state, and then they send it out to 2 universities for independent analysis. And they tell these universities, we are specifically looking for indications of racial disparities, and they use a variety of analysis to do that. 8 in total, I won't go into each one just because of the time. But that report research identified agencies for racial disparities. The Milton Police were not one of them, nor were we in the 3 prior years that this has existed since this law passed. A side note, even for those departments that were identified, the findings specifically stated there are many explanations for racial disparities in traffic enforcement other than officer bias. So this, disproportionate term that this article references, collecting data is easy, analyzing it is difficult. Everyone can draw their own conclusions, and I respect that. But basically, disproportionate means too large or too small in comparison to something else. I want to be clear, this data, they make the comparison and they use the word disproportionate statement in comparison to our residential population. They are not making that disproportionate statement in comparison to our drive-in population. Their own research on that data, you will see, showed that 86% of the stops made by the Milton Police were non-residents. The proponent of this article himself has posted documents, he spoke about this, and I will quote, "Thousands of people from Randolph use this road daily to get to Boston, and thousands of people from Boston pass through Milton to get to Randolph. Milton police would ticket speeders going over 25 miles per hour. Those are most often commuters from Randolph and Boston or visitors between those communities." Goes on to say the plan would impose fees on the majority-minority communities of Dorchester and Randolph. So my issue is this: the same person who says this about thousands of non-resident minorities passing through this area then makes reference that our data does not match our residential-only population. That makes no sense to me. I find it contradictory. I find it unfair. If anything, his statement is an acknowledgement that the data should not be compared to the Milton resident demographics, but instead to the road user demographics, since thousands of non-residents are using this area. Essentially, the same vehicles on Route 28 in Randolph at the Holiday Inn Lantana then enter Milton, going from a more diverse to a less diverse community. It's misleading to suggest that these same drivers on the same roadway are now supposed to somehow change to be less diverse operators to match a different population before they reach the next red light 1 mile away. So I have no interest in this article. I have no opinion on it, but I am concerned that the Milton police were unfairly used. I think there's a political motive, to each their own, but I think it's a little misleading. I welcome anyone to look at that data. Like I said, 86% of the stops are non-resident. The proportion, this is what it will look like when you bring it up. I know it's hard for everybody to see. Leroy, just trying to be more direct on your question and a patch of my eyesight. It shows about a 30% disparity for African American. It shows 10% for Hispanic and 6% for other. But I'll also give you a sample, and it's not a full year because we changed computer systems, but we pulled by hand, and I just got about 10 months, so I didn't get 12 months. But I think this is a good indicator, too, of the drive-in population, which is not reflective just of Randolph Ave either, but town-wide like that data is. But analyzing almost a year's worth of data for crash data. These are calls for service. These are not incidents where the police pulled over a motorist. This is where we were sent to car crashes. 59% of those operators were male, 41% were female. But when it came to the racial demographics, 41% were white, 43% were black, 9% were Hispanic, 2% were Asian, 0 were Native American, 1 was Middle Eastern, and 4 were unknown. So that data alone, I feel, is a good indicator of calls for service the Milton Police have responded to on their roadways that make up the demographics, and they're very similar to what the state data is. And I'll just reiterate, the state identified departments they had concerns with. They've never identified the Milton Police Department.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, you're recognized, and thank you. You're our last speaker then on this. Please.
I'll definitely be short. I just wish there was more information on this.
Name and precinct again. So,
oh, thank you. My name is Buba, Precinct 1. I just wish there were more information to this to understand the real problem and then the broader problem. I don't think it comes down to race, and that's usually very easy to make. I think the issue is traffic and safety. We all have streets, like the school zones, and I'm sure we've all seen a lot of people run 40 miles an hour on next to Tucker, at least. I don't know if it's every school. I've never seen anybody stopped there, being stopped. So to me, I feel like The issue is having 25 miles an hour that is cannot be enforced. If it has to be enforced, of course, we'll put more police resources there. I put it down to time and money. I don't think we have that amount of resources to police that. The second option is the rotary seems to be a better option to slow down the traffic, and people being more aware of it will slow down. But I don't have much more information, so I cannot really make an opinion. But I just wish there was more voices heard in this debate, and so we can all learn more. I'm not a traffic expert. I really don't know policing, but I just wanted to know more about this.
I'm sorry, was there a specific question, sir, or you were just making a statement? Just a statement. Okay, thank you. Seeing no other speakers, again, with a no vote, if you are in favor of this citizens petition, you vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. And then after the vote, I just wanted to make one brief comment. All in favor of the citizen petition, please signify by voting yes, pressing 1, 2 no, 3 abstain. The motion fails by a vote of 6 yeses to 181 noes and 9 abstains. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of work goes into this warrant on your behalf from school committee, warrant committee, town administrators, select board, library, trustees, and parks. I just want to offer my public thanks to all these volunteers and officials who do all this work on our behalf. With that, I'll entertain a motion to dissolve. Seconded? All in favor of dissolving, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. We are dissolved.